All those listening and watching in the chamber, welcome to the House Economic Matters Committee. We're going to start with House Bill 884. Do we have a representative of the Baltimore delegation here? Seeing none, we will move on, and I guess they will go at the end. Where's Crosby at? See my vice chair? Oh, you know what? No, I think 3 members were sent over. So, no, you're. All right, Delegate Crosby is an ENT. We're second on a hearing. Good boy. Is Delegate Clippinger available? Chairman Clippinger. All right, so now we do have Delegate Jackson. It's going to be one of those days, isn't it? Who? Yep, Delegate Phillips and Delegate Ebersol. Yes, sir, you were here at the right time, in the right place. This is House Bill 1111. Go ahead, sir, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wilson and the members of the Economic Matters Committee. Scott Phillips here requesting a favorable report on House Bill 1111. This bill authorizes Baltimore County to honor certificates of guarantee that are issued by an industry association on behalf of their members to satisfy what would otherwise be a bond requirement. The legislation permits but does not require the county to accept certificates of guarantee. You may be aware, some of you have been here for a while, this is not a novel idea. This is a change to Maryland Annotated Code Insurance Article Section 1203. The present law allows a number of counties to participate in this program, to include Calvert, Charles, Howard, Prince George's, Montgomery, St. Mary's, and Washington counties. With such a change, certificates of guarantee issued by a nonprofit association would allow the members, in essence, to reduce their costs of participating in government contracts. As mentioned, it would be at the discretion of the county. In addition, as an advocate to small and minority-owned businesses, I see this as allowing companies to attain a certificate to reduce their cost of entry in doing government contracting. The bill is being supported by the Maryland Building Industry Association. It has been presented to the Baltimore County delegation for its support, and there is no objection from the Baltimore County administration. For those reasons, I would ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1111, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, sir. My question is, as you said, it was put in front of the Baltimore
we just haven't voted on it yet, Mr. Chairman.
Because we definitely need a letter before we can move local legislation past.
Understood. It's been presented, and we should have a vote this week. And Mr. Chairman, I might say this is my first testimony as a freshman delegate, so I'm pleased to be before you.
Outstanding. You're doing a great job, sir. Right. Seeing no questions, we do have several individuals testifying in favor. Lori Graff, Robert Itton, Scott Nicholson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Robert Etton on behalf of the Maryland Building Industry Association. With me is Lori Graff, who is the president of the association. I really don't have very much to add. You have our written testimony to what the sponsor said. This just allows Baltimore County to join the other counties that are taking advantage of this. And the reason why it's advantageous is that it's much less expensive if you can go through this mechanism, and that helps for affordable housing. And particularly in Baltimore County and Baltimore City, affordable housing is a really critical issue in those jurisdictions. And the building industry appreciates the sponsor's report and would support and would greatly appreciate a favorable report from the committee. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lori Graff, CEO of Maryland Building Industry Association, and I am going to be the most popular person in the room because I'm going to say me too. So, thank you.
Chairman, can I point one other thing out, please, if you don't mind?
That you don't. You're usually very short with your, I appreciate the brevity of your testimony, and while we're obviously not in a hurry, I don't feel like you need to expand on anything, but go ahead. We'll let this one time go. Yes? Is there something important you felt you had to say, Bob?
All I want to say is that the Baltimore City bill is identical to this bill. It has passed out of the delegation. It just adds, just like this bill adds Baltimore County, the Baltimore City bill adds Baltimore City. It was, the vote in the city delegation was unanimous in support.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no questions, we do have one virtual witness, Scott Nicholson. You may begin, sir.
Thank you all. Appreciate the comments from our esteemed representative, Mr. Enton, as well as Ms. Graff, and I'll just continue with her theme and say me three. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Again, wonderful testimony, sir. Thank you very much. Seeing no questions, I believe that concludes this bill.
Yeah, just supporting. Oh, I thought it was a city one. Sorry. I thought I was late for that one. It's gonna look the exact same.
Well, you are late.
Because I had to start my bill. I had to start my own budget hearing.
We can call that, if you like, we can call your bill now.
If that's your pleasure, I would appreciate it. It's gonna be the same thing.
You might as well keep the same panel. This is House Bill 884, Baltimore City Delegation Bill. Ma'am, you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your graciousness, and thank you to all distinguished members of the Economic Matters Committee. I'm here presenting House Bill 884, which is going to sound very similar to the bill you just heard for Baltimore County. It just provides an opportunity for our jurisdiction, should they decide to avail themselves of this alternative way to ensure that we have proper bonding for various building projects across our city. It could be a way to reduce costs for building, and as I know many of us know, we're in a time where building can just be expensive for a variety of reasons. So having a diversity of ways that you can have proper, securing of that process, we feel like it's just an opportunity for Baltimore City, just like Baltimore County is attempting to do, to have that flexibility. So we do hope that we could get your consideration, and this is already successfully passed out of the Baltimore City House delegation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Before we continue, could you please state your name for the record,
I
please?
apologize, sir. For the record, my name is Delegate Stephanie Smith.
Thank you very much. And go ahead with your panel.
I have nothing else to add. Happy to answer any questions.
Again, Lori Graff, CEO of Maryland Building Industry, and again, happy to answer any questions, but thank you for your support.
Scott Nicholson, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Again, seeing no questions, I really appreciate the brevity of your testimony and your timeliness and arrival. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. I do believe I saw Delegate Rosenberg come in. Outstanding. We'll be calling next House Bill 1103. And do you have a panel?
No, I do not, just me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This legislation is prompted by two circumstances in my district, but I think that those instances call for a slight revision in our existing policy regarding outages. that would be more responsive, not wait until there is a problem, but anticipate problems. The specific issue had to deal with a block of Stewart Avenue in the 41st District where outages have occurred for several houses on one side of the block prior to a storm, not caused by a storm. These have happened more than once. The current standard is 250% is the standard for the necessitating action, and what my bill would do is modify that and change it to 200% in terms of power failure. There's also been an instance with in the Mount Washington neighborhood, specifically the Pill Hill neighborhood, of problems, and so they're now transferring the power to underground. The current system waits for a problem to happen, and I think we should be tinkering with the existing system, but important changes so that the power companies have a responsibility with the oversight of the Public Service Commission to initiate action to address problems before not just someone, but a whole block or a whole side of the block loses their power and has to clean out the refrigerator, lost time because they don't have phone service and whatnot at home, especially if it's in a day in February when it's not supposed to be 70 degrees outside, but is the typical getting down to below freezing. So I will say BG&E has been responsive and is meeting with a specific constituent whose problem prompted this legislation. But I would still urge the committee to communicate to the Public Service Commission that we need to take a closer look at how we address these kind of problems with repeated outages. There is a top 10 list, if you will. This community didn't make the list. There must be, for sure, other communities throughout the state, obviously not just in the 41st District, where there is a recurring problem. And it shouldn't take an email or a phone call to a legislator and then an introduction of a bill to get the power company out on the site to address the problem. So request your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't see any questions for you at this time. I do believe there are two unfavorables, Ann Kloss and David Wright. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Economic Matters Committee. For the record, my name is Ann Clace on behalf of PEPCO and Delmarva Power. Next to me is David Wright, External Affairs Manager for BG&E. We are here today to respectfully oppose House Bill 1103. The bill is duplicative as there are already well-established processes in place for reporting feeder reliability. Additionally, this legislation exposes our company and our customers to unnecessary security risks. As discussed by Delegate Rosenberg, this legislation requires electric companies to include information pertaining to specific locations of feeders that have experienced frequent service interruptions and to develop a plan to reduce those interruptions. PEPCO and Delmarva Power strive to provide our customers with the highest level of service quality and reliability and understand the importance of being held accountable for meeting those reliability standards. However, we feel the current law and process the PSC has established for feeder reliability and reporting is not only sufficient, but also effective. Currently, electric companies located in Maryland are required to comply with COMAR 20.50.12.03A, which has established the poorest performing feeder standards for feeders assigned to Maryland. With respect to sharing feeder locations, due to the ongoing concerns pertaining to grid security, it is inappropriate to share exact feeder locations. It is essential to operational and physical security that sensitive information about critical infrastructure that could endanger the integrity of our electric grid is not publicized. Once again, Pepco and Delmarva Power strive to provide our customers with the highest level of service quality and reliability. While we acknowledge House Bill 1103 may be well-intentioned, we believe it is duplicative and unnecessary and respectfully ask for an unfavorable report. Thank you for your time and happy to address any questions.
Good afternoon, Chair Wilson, members of the committee. David Wright on behalf of Baltimore Gas and Electric. BGE also opposes House Bill 1103 for the same reasons that my colleague just stated. I want to add two more important points that this bill would do to the current measurement standard. The first is that the current poor performing feeder standard allows a utility to exclude outage data from major events. So things that are outside of a utility's control, like hurricanes, thunderstorms, and even physical attacks against our infrastructure. So if you start bringing that data into this metric, it starts to, we think, kind of really take away from the measurement of any utility being able to reliably operate and maintain its electric system. So it starts to muddy the waters. The second big change is that the current standard looks at a 3-year measurement window for noncompliance. House Bill 1103 would take that down to a single 12-month period. And so you combine that with the included major event outage data, and it really starts to completely rejuggle the list of what we consider to be a poor performing feeder. So I think what it does is it takes away from, those kind of frequent offenders that are really habitual problems, and then we almost start playing this game of virtual whack-a-mole, being very reactive to any given feeder that has to be addressed in 1 year. So for those reasons, we respectfully request an unfavorable finding out of committee. And again, we'll take any questions.
I have a question, and I guess my question is, Delegate Rosenberg is probably one of the most seasoned veterans we have here, and I know he would not bring up a superfluous bill. So you heard his rationale, and how do you feel that that is currently being addressed?
Chair Wilson, I can say that just this morning, just understanding the customer who had this particular complaint, we have had some ongoing efforts to mitigate their power outages. We've already done some, and a lot of it has been kind of forestry related. So we've done some hotspot trimming on their particular tap. We are actively trimming the entire feeder for that neighborhood. We're about, I think it was 78% complete now. We're expecting to complete that trimming in mid-March, weather permitting. So we're hoping that will clear that up. And we've got our entire distribution engineering group laser focused on this particular area to continually monitor for any outages and sources for improvement.
And I appreciate that, and I believe the good delegate's point was he felt that it should not have been necessary for him to get involved for it to be raised to this level. So I'll ask it again. To ensure that we don't have to go through this path in the future, what do you think needs to be done? Because obviously he put this bill in as a response to that. You're basically stating that everything is okay. So that's the question.
Yeah, understood, Chair. I would say that I take pride in our company being very reactive, not only to our customer complaints, but also to those from our elected officials. If that were ever to come up to him again, he's free to work directly with me, and I can work internally to get these types of situations resolved, because it does us no good to have customers out of power. We're customers just like our customers are. So we're continually, really extending ourselves to try to work with our partners, and we welcome all interaction to that level.
And again, just to be clear, I think that's what he was trying to avoid. Contacting him again. And I think that's the whole reason for the bill, wasn't so he would have, because I respect what you're saying and I understand the immediacy of your action once you received the complaint. I believe this bill was put in because he was concerned that that would be the only way that this immediate action would be taken. And you're stating it's not.
No, I don't believe that there's a necessary change in the legislation. There could have been some kind of failings behind the scenes. I'm certainly not privy to those details. But I can certainly look into that and report back to the delegate.
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Seeing no witnesses and no questions, we'll move on to the next. You sure, Steve?
You don't mind.
I mean, clearly.
I appreciate it.
Go ahead. Delegate.
You know, I do appreciate what the delegate brought forth, and, you know, we've all bumped into something with our power company we thought was an issue, but I'm under the understanding that when you guys all come to us for a rate increase, this ongoing maintenance is part of that rate increase. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I question what this bill could generate, maybe another bump in the rates for somebody if we were gonna extend those maintenances. And I'm a little concerned that, you know, we keep adding things to the fire on this, if you will. And I appreciate the work you did, but I also appreciate what he's saying because we do see that. And I was wondering if there's any way around this as far as, is there a way to pull something from somewhere to put it somewhere? Or are your maintenance plans addressing these types of issues continuously?
So I will say currently, in the past 5 years, BGE has spent $7.7 million on work that has been generated by this poor performing feeder standard. Our current estimates are if this legislation would go into place, that amount and the number of feeders would essentially double. So we're looking at a roughly $3 million a year. And you're correct, those are costs that ultimately are borne by our ratepayers.
Okay. That's my point. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Now, seeing no questions.
I don't have any more if that's what you're.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this panel. I believe we can move on to the next bill. I see Delegate Jacobs is in the building. So we'll call House Bill 1099. Delegate Jacobs.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Economic Matters Committee. Good to see some of my old colleagues in here, and David Fraser and Mr. Weibel over there. Today I'm here to present, I'm sorry. Actually, well, it's from E&T, but Delegate Amprey's been there so many times, I thought he was back on the committee. And Delegate Harrison, so, you know, CT, you were there my first term, or Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. It's like old home week. But it's good to be here with you. And I'm here today. I have a request from my district on an issue of importance. I'm here to present HB 1099, a bill to prohibit the Public Service Commission from authorizing and a person from undertaking the construction of a solar energy generating station that uses a battery-based energy storage device unless the device will be and is designed to be protected by an automatic fire suppression system. The automatic fire suppression system is subject to approval by the state fire marshal. And this does not apply to generating stations with a capacity less than 2 megawatts. I do have 2 short videos here. They're both just about 2 minutes each. Because, sir? Well, at least look at the first one, and you might get the general idea. But I think, you know, that seeing that video may give you more of an idea of exactly what this bill is trying to accomplish. So if you will, Maestro. Yeah, crank that sound up good.
Figure out what caused it all. Team 12's Michael Doubtna is in Surprise, where the explosion happened on Friday. And Michael, what new details are we learning tonight?
Well, Caribe, it was just behind me at this APS facility where we saw 4 firefighters, well, end up being impacted by this explosion. They were part of a special hazmat team, and they were waiting for the readings to be inside, safe enough for them to go inside. But as soon as they were about to, well, that's when the explosion occurred.
We've never had a call to this magnitude.
The units over here just exploded.
It certainly has shocked our fire department.
500 down.
911 calls and a list of injuries.
The nose fracture a skull fracture.
Shows the devastation of an explosion at an APS facility in Surprise Friday night.
And it turned out that they sliced through an artery in his left leg.
The results, hospitalizing 4 Peoria firefighters.
We don't know what the long-term effects of these injuries will be.
The APS facility contains lithium-ion batteries, able to hold enough energy to power 1,000 homes for an hour, and part of that energy was released on the 4 hazmat firefighters.
Seeing the force that hit them had to be incredibly strong. It's very devastating. We're just very thankful that they're alive.
According to Peoria PIO Michael Selmer, the hazmat team waited for the readings to go down before going in, but as they were set to enter, that's when the explosion occurred.
They never even got a chance. Not even a chance.
The investigation is still ongoing, and at this point, it is still unclear whether or not it was the batteries, a power surge, or something else which caused the fire or explosion.
They were within just centimeters of their life in this particular call.
Now, if you'd like to help the families and
I believe we got the general gist of what your
the other
issue
one
is.
is very similar. It was 8 members injured plus a police officer, but you get the general
Yes,
idea.
sir.
And
I
I
do.
appreciate the opportunity to show the video. But like I said, you know, I couldn't do nearly as good a job of presenting this as a video, so.
Thank you.
I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. We do have a county over my district that has a small facility, and it has in the approval process some larger ones. And we're, you know, want to be proactive to make sure we have public safety and the safety of the, especially volunteer firefighters, et cetera, in place prior to what could be, you know, a thermal malfunctioning event. So I've also have an amendment that was issued that you should have in lines page 2 in lines 13 through 15 that be struck in their entirety. That was offered to me to offer today. And I was contacted yesterday by MACO that their legislative committee voted to support this bill with amendments. They indicated that the batteries are an issue everywhere, and they think that there should be a blanket requirement for fire suppression systems for utility scale batteries. And it was too late for them to testify, but they said they would be submitting literature to the committee, late file. So I do have Kaylee Leager here from Caroline County Commissioners.
Thank you. So as Delegate Jacobs said, this is an issue that we are concerned with after the video that you saw and seeing them pop up throughout the state. We believe that the Public Service Commission may understand the electrical needs of an area, but the local jurisdictions have a better understanding of the uniqueness of each individual community to include the hazards that we may face. So prohibiting the Public Service Commission from authorizing a battery energy storage system without these safety precautions and measures installed to protect our first responders is something that we would seriously like to take a look at.
Thank you. So I guess the question, is it your testimony that as a county, you can't require that there be fire suppression systems in these battery storage units?
I believe when a solar company goes, as the committee is aware, goes to the Public Service Commission, and if it's over the 2, I believe it's megawatts, then they get preempted from the CPCN. This is specifically stating to require those solar companies to have those systems in it, because if the county, if it's preempted, the county's local zoning laws and ordinances don't take effect.
Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
Yes, thank you.
I ask you for a favorable vote.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Next, we have Delegate Stein, House Bill 1214.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I have a witness?
Mr. Chairman and committee members, it's hard for me to follow Delegate Jacobs and bring greetings from ENT, but I'll do my best. And So, Mr. Chairman, committee members, since this bill deals with retail energy offers that offer 100% clean or renewable energy, since last year, I've received a number of solicitations from a retail energy supplier to switch my power to them, and that supplier advertised 100% clean, pollution-free energy. Now, I haven't considered switching since I'm fine with my standard offer service, but I later wondered, how do we know that the supplier's energy or the energy from any other retail energy supplier that advertises 100% clean, pollution-free energy, that it is indeed sourced from RECs that are clean and renewable and pollution-free? To me, and I think to most customers who get those solicitations, they would understand this offer as referring to the renewable energy sources that are in the RPS: solar, wind, geothermal, ocean, or small hydro. So this bill requires any power supplier that makes such claims to document with the PSC its renewable RECs for the power that it's providing to Maryland customers. The power, as the bill is drafted, the power source should be located in the PGM or delivered into the PGM region. It also requires that a supplier making these kinds of claims for its energy have a corresponding disclosure on its solicitation. So in the end, I view this as a consumer-friendly bill. If an energy supplier is advertising 100% clean, pollution-free energy, it should document that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I urge a favorable report.
Good afternoon. I'm not supposed to.
No. But
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Great. Good afternoon, Chair and members of Economic Matters. I'm Laurel Peltier, and I'm an AARP utility advocate, and I also chair the Energy Advocates Coalition. And I also get a lot of calls. I've helped a lot of people in this room with their constituents and their questions about their BG&E bills and their energy supplier contracts. And what's really interesting is I get a lot of questions about these green offers. To give you an idea, out of the 400,000 households on retail energy, a solid 25% of them are on these green power offers. And that was really the goal of this bill in 20 years ago, to have innovative stuff. What's challenging is that it's hard to tell exactly what you're getting from the marketing because there are no regulations. There's just no marketing regulations, and there's no reporting. And by and large, everybody thinks they're actually getting wind energy, a PPA fed straight into the grid. And as you can see in my written testimony, people are paying enormous premiums compared to regulated rates. And they think they're getting something. So this bill is just a consumer protection bill that says, please explain the product you're getting, report to the PSC these extra RECs, and also to make sure that the RECs are clean energy, because that's what people think they're getting and that's what they think they're paying for. So I put some examples of the consumer marketing that people see. It's very hard to find details on the websites, and I think people should just know what they're buying. So thank you for a favorable report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Kevin Mosier on behalf of the Public Service Commission. The Commission appreciates the efforts of this bill to increase customer transparency. We think that would do it as written, and quite simply as written too. The Commission it would be fairly easy for the Commission to ensure that the RECs are actually retired, not double counted in any way. And so this would be a very feasible bill as written for the Commission to implement. And thank you. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Thank you. I believe we have one more favorable. Ann Manuel, who's virtual.
Yes. Whoops, unable to start video. Thank you very much. My name's Ann Manuel. I've lived in Silver Spring. Okay, it's not on. I've lived in Silver Spring, Maryland for 38 years, and I'm writing on behalf of myself to urge a favorable report. I'm deeply concerned about the threat climate change poses to our world, our children, our grandchildren. Wildfires, flooding, sea level rise, mass extinctions. You know You know the litany, and we need to do everything possible to maintain a livable planet. And that's why my husband and I have for years been willing to pay a premium to have our electricity come from renewable sources. And that's why we chose WGL Energy's Clean Steps wind power, both for our home in Silver Spring and for a cabin in Myersville, Maryland. We were assured by the company's literature that we were purchasing 100% wind power. This is a quote from a letter they sent us in July. Your choice of Clean E Energy certified 100% Clean Steps wind power from WGL Energy is sourced from wind farms located in the PJM interconnection and benefits your local environment. Clean Steps wind power covers 100% of your electricity usage and is composed of 100% wind energy. So we paid a premium of more than $1,000 last year for what we believe to be wind power. And we recently learned that those claims are misleading. WGL is not selling us power generated by wind. They're not buying wind power on our behalf. We're getting the same mix of the local power grid supply as our neighbors who have not opted for 100% clean energy. Instead, we're paying a steep premium for RECs rather than the energy itself. And I understand that a minuscule portion of that premium goes to wind farms in payment for the REC. Thank you very much for your time. I believe HB 1214 is a step in the right direction.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I do not see any questions. Seeing no questions for this panel of favorables, thank you very much. We have one favorable with amendments that we'll be calling next, Jennifer Spinozzi.
Oh, now it's green. Can you all hear me okay? Chair Wilson, Vice Chair Crosby, members of the Economic Matters Committee. My name is Jennifer Spinozzi. I'm the General Counsel and Executive Vice President of Corporate Affairs for Clean Choice Energy. We're a clean tech company based in DC. We've been doing business in Maryland for 10 years now. And we applaud the sponsor for this effort to bring greater transparency to renewable energy products in Maryland. Beyond our RPS requirements and obligations, we exclusively provide 100% renewable energy products that are wind and solar. And in the last reporting year, 2021, for Maryland customers, that specifically included 70% wind and 30% solar. I'm concerned by the earlier comments that we have a customer who seems to believe that receiving grid power plus RECs is not renewable energy, because in fact it is. And it's really imperative for customers who are buying these products to understand how the market works. The very foundation of Maryland's own renewable portfolio standard is that RECs are tradable instruments that represent the environmental attributes of renewable energy. And when a retailer or any other company combines grid power with RECs, that is a legally, and in fact, the only legal way to substantiate a renewable energy claim. So it's really important that customers are getting clear and accurate information about this issue. Beyond that, we see a real opportunity in the reporting obligation that's created by this bill for Maryland to track and to quantify those voluntary renewable energy purchases that are being made today by Maryland customers. We think that that would give the state an opportunity to actually accelerate the achievement of its renewable portfolio standard. Thank you.
Steve? Thank you very much for your testimony, ma'am. I do not see any other questions. We'll move on to the unfavorables. Thank you very much. Calling Brett Laniger, Richard Reinhardt, John Fiastro, Katie Nash. Try this one more time. In opposition, we have Brett Laniger, Richard Reinhardt, John Fiastro, Katie Nash. Seeing none of those. That concludes the hearing. Thank you guys very much. We'll be moving on. It's Delegate Crosby, right? Crosby. Where in the hell is Luke? You guys may go. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Economic Matters Committee. Today, I'd like to focus my testimony on the Renewable Portfolio Standard and the changes this legislation contemplates. And the RPS is routinely discussed in this committee, and sources of Tier 1 energy is a frequent topic of discussion. In fact, there's a study due back next year. HB 1214 would create a new definition of green power that currently contradicts with existing RPS law. And much of the testimony has covered the significant changes in marketing, but not so much that point. That said, our opposition stems from our view that Maryland's creation of RECs creates Marylanders the opportunity to choose renewable products. Taken one step forward, the decision this body made in 1999 was forward-thinking and opened the door for renewable energy innovators to advance Maryland's clean energy future. Innovation can look like technology advances, give consumers more information, greater transparency about what's on their bill they receive every month, solar and storage solutions, and more importantly, products that are offered by companies like ours. As we electrify, companies like Vistra will be at the forefront of the market, offering time-of-use products that provide customers with options that match their energy needs and helps the state manage peak demand challenges. The competition to be the best is a good thing for consumers, and I'm passionate about Maryland's ability to move forward. Respectfully, Vistra urges an unfavorable report on HB 1214. Katie Nash for the record for Vistra, perhaps because rather than considerable ways we can expand efforts to educate consumers, we have innovations and options to access renewable energy products or utilize technology to reduce consumption. This legislation focuses on creating a new definition in the RPS and adds a confusing disclosure we're concerned with. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, my name is John Fiastro, here on behalf of NRG. First, I'd like to thank Ms. Nash for allowing me to catch my breath. I threw her under the bus by letting her speak first.
It's fine, we got it.
But now I'm composed. So thank you very much for the indulgence of this committee. Look, this bill has a few problems with it, but primarily, we'd like to recognize that the advocates and supporters of the bill, they want to do something. They're very excited about it. They're passionate about it. They've made some claims within their testimony. What I'd like to say, though, is that the claims that they make in their testimony are not accurate. We, as an industry, have recognized RECs as a measure by which we account for clean energy. This is not new. This is over 20 years old. This process is accepted by the EPA. It is recognized, and infrastructure, IT infrastructure has been built at PJM and the country's other ISOs and regional transmission operators in order to measure and account for RECs. It has been recognized by the Federal Trade Commission in their green guidelines, which state that if you are to sell a renewable energy product, you must purchase a commensurate number of renewable energy credits or certificates. Then finally, it's the underpinning of this state's renewable energy portfolio standard. So I recognize that the advocates have some concerns about RECs and how they work, but this bill goes a little bit further than they want it to go. I'm not sure it really reflects their concerns. NRG has Green Mountain Energy. NRG has suggested that the cost for Green Mountain Energy customers who today get a 100% clean energy product would go up by about $10 a month. So, and they're already paying a slight premium for the knowledge and knowing that they are getting a clean energy product. product.
Definitely need you to wrap it up, John.
Here I am, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you very much. I know I have a question. So you heard the testimony of the young lady on Zoom as well as the advocates. Is it your testimony today that individuals should be able to say they're selling wind energy when in fact they're not?
Mr. Chairman, it has been viewed that if you are a clean energy generator, a windmill, a solar, that the moment you sell that certificate associated, that you are actually just selling electricity, but the ability to call it a green product, a renewable product, a wind product, is sold with that rec. Now, if you look at the federal guidelines, the FTC guidelines, they have several examples. The guidelines are linked in the NRG testimony. If you look down at example 5, and I'm sure that a few will do that right now to make sure I'm citing it properly. But if you look down at example 5, a building owner that has a solar panel, solar array on the roof and operates underneath, they can't tell their customers, if they go ahead and sell those RECs that is associated with that generation, they can no longer say to their customers that their building is powered by clean energy. You know, it reminds me, Mr. Chairman, there's a Seinfeld episode, and I hate to invoke Seinfeld here at the table.
I've never seen it.
Never. It's about these guys in New York, they don't do anything. But there's an episode where Kramer sells his biography to Jay Peterman and goes to tell a story that happened to him. Elaine tells him, "You can't tell that story. You sold that story. That's Jay Peterman's story right now." It's the same thing with this green energy. It's the moment you sell that rec, you're no longer entitled to say you're selling green energy. You are afoul of the guidelines set forth by the Federal Trade Commission. So, longer sitcom reference. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Very long answer. I don't know if it answered my question, but you were entertaining. Because what I heard was individuals that are willing to pay more because they believe that they're buying green energy, that they're buying energy purely created from windmills. To my understanding, and again, obviously, my subcommittee and my chair of utilities will get into this in some depth, their intention was to make sure that those folks that were lured into buying that energy from that company were being told the truth. But you don't disagree with that policy, that concept, right?
No, I think that you should get the product that you're buying.
Right. So if they're advertising that they are selling wind energy, then you believe that they should be truth only, that should be truth, right?
According to the Federal Trade Commission, if the sales are matched by a commensurate number of RECs.
You know who doesn't understand RECs? Most everybody in this room and most everybody out there. So what I'm saying is, what it sounds like is the shell game that we play with RECs. You expect every customer to also understand and say, well, RECs, green energy, it's about the same thing, right? Because that's what I'm just trying to get to. I thought the basic part of the bill was that they just wanted people who wanted to save the planet and wanted to buy solely green energy, that they be able to purchase that green energy. Obviously, I'm sorry, that they are knowledgeable of where their energy comes from and that somebody can't tell them, well, it's wind, but it might not be. It might be RECs.
So I think what you're talking about, Mr. Chairman, is deceptive marketing practices.
Correct.
But this bill contemplates adding to the renewable portfolio.
Yeah, mind you, like I said, there are multiple parts of this bill. I just wanted to get to what I believe the young lady was testifying to, which was the deceptive practices.
Mr. Chairman, in a hypothetical where a ratepayer was surrounded by, let's say, coal generating assets, the electrons will flow to the closest output, the closest outlet.
Sure.
If that ring of coal or fossil generators is then surrounded by wind power, there is no certainty with which I can tell a ratepayer from which generation asset those electrons are streaming.
I agree.
And that's problematic. And the way we have overcome this and the way that we meet the renewable portfolio standard is with RECs. We say that RECs is the method by which we measure.
Oh, I believe me. Unfortunately, I now understand because I had to do a lot of research on this when I became chairman. But my point really was about the deceptive advertising, and I thought part of the bill was to get at that. You agree?
The part of the bill is to make sure that a wind rec is retired for a wind product. Is that what you're suggesting?
That if you advertise that you're selling a wind product, that you actually be selling a wind product.
That you're getting the wind recs that you're buying?
I don't believe that's what the intent of the bill was, but okay. Delegate Charkoudian, I know, and then Delegate Arentz, but go ahead. I know I've been waiting for you to jump in.
Well, I know I've been trying, the mic is,
Well, that was intentional.
Or as I like to call it, symbol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, I think I do understand how RECs work, and I think I understand what this bill is trying to do. And I'm not, RECs may be an imperfect way to do it. Let me put in a plug for long-term contracts, but putting that aside, we've got RECs, and I don't think that this bill is arguing against RECs. So you're talking about federal acceptance of RECs, national acceptance. Okay, we're with that. I think what this bill is getting at is right now you could be buying, I think, the renewable attributes of a large hydro plant in Washington State, right? And you could tell a customer in my community that they're getting 100% clean energy, right? Because all that happens right now is that you have to buy RECs, and the RECs could be anything that's considered renewable anywhere. And I think what we're saying is in this state, we have a somewhat imperfect, but we do have some standards on what is and isn't renewable. And those standards are tied to the PJM grid, which my colleague over there wants to talk to you about. But that's where we are right now. Like, we've accepted these are renewable, these are not, and this is the grid that it has to be tied to. And I think the problem is right now, without this bill, a clean energy, a retail supplier can purchase RECs from large hydro, which isn't in our tier 1, and it could be in the other side of the country. And our residents could be paying more for that, thinking that they're contributing to growing clean energy on our grid, which happens to be PJM, but on our grid. And so I guess is that, first of all, is that accurate? Could that be currently covered as clean energy?
Under the PSC, under COMAR, yes. Under Federal Trade Commission rules, yes. There is a national market for RECs.
Right.
And what we're talking about here is a voluntary product, Delegate,
it
right?
is.
This is a voluntary product that retail suppliers are offering.
You got to let him answer the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
They're offering a voluntary product in the marketplace. And look, other states, our Public Service Commission has a shopping website. You can search that shopping website with duration, price, other attributes. Pennsylvania shopping website, you can actually narrow down to PJM, Pennsylvania source RECs. So that would be something that we would be interested in seeing the Public Service Commission do. They could narrow down to make it clear for buyers. They could narrow down the search criteria and do it. But and my client, NRG, does offer products that are sourced closer to home. They have what they call a farm to market product. So you can offer those products. The closer you get to home, if you are using a PJM REC, you're going to pay a little bit more. And customers, while they are interested in buying a renewable product, still remain price sensitive. So they will be interested in products that do offer those RECs that might be sourced nationally. Because for them, like we all admit that this is all difficult stuff, right? Energy is difficult, and we spend our careers learning it. The person who's spending a few minutes a year trying to figure it out, they don't have as much time, and I agree. But they're not as sensitive, but there are products, if they are, that can answer that sensitivity.
And John,
I'll keep those responses tighter, Mr. Chairman.
Lord help us. I just want you to narrowly tailor them to the question that will hopefully also be narrowly tailored.
The question that I'm trying to ask, because you're saying this bill is unfair because it's inconsistent with what the federal acceptance is about RECs. And what we're saying is, the chairman just got through saying many people here don't even fully understand RECs. So now we're doing a consumer protection bill, and a consumer protection bill has to add protection for consumers. So what I'm just trying to clarify is, right now, does our law allow you to purchase large hydro from Washington State, those RECs, and tell people in Silver Spring that they're buying 100% clean energy when those are the RECs that you're purchasing?
That product would be consistent with COMAR and would be consistent with the Federal Trade Guidelines, Trade Commission guidelines.
Okay.
So can you?
Thank you.
Yes.
So thank you, and I think that's why we need to change the statute, so I appreciate that, thank you.
Steve, you ready?
And also, now with the RPS, what we're trying to say here, we're sitting out telling everybody we have such great RPS goals, we're at 25%, and it's all based on what the consumers have been led to believe, that they're buying clean energy, when in fact, they may be buying something cleaner, but they're buying something from out west or wherever it's coming from. But wouldn't you agree that we're kind of pointing this to the PJM, we're going to keep this internal. That means anything we get out there is going to cost more. But for the sake of being on the PGM and giving Marylanders clean energy, wouldn't you say that this is very much loosely or basically the way the RPS works today?
Yes. Basically, when you're buying default service or just regular supply, that supplier needs to buy a commensurate number of renewable energy credits to the state's stated goal for the given compliance year. So, for that given compliance year, that percentage is renewable according to the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard, because the suppliers are buying those RECs, yes.
My only comment would be is if we could possibly put this into our own legislatures and our own RPF to sit back and try to expect the same things from us as we do, we're going to try to expect from outside the state, outside the PGM providers.
Delegate, this bill does put it in your RPS. If you look under, it's under the, it's portion of it is under the RPS subtitle.
At a higher rate. Okay,
And which will confuse, which will confuse customers.
Well, to be honest with you, I have so many people that tell me how much they're doing because of clean energy, because they're following Maryland standards. And I try to explain to them that the vast majority of that energy is not coming from anything we do, anything Maryland does, or even for that matter, if there's no one on the PGM, they can actually say they claim that they produce more clean energy than they actually need in their state. But thank you very much.
Are there any more loaded questions? I think Delegate Harrison.
This one, my question is very straightforward for the senior citizen who may be watching and wants a very straightforward answer. We don't need, all of the other technical language. How do we guarantee that my grandmother who wants to be a part of the clean energy phase and she pays this extra, how are we guaranteeing that she is in fact getting what she pays for? I think that that's what the meat of this bill is all about, making sure that people are getting what they paid for. So just very straightforward, how do we guarantee that that is what they're getting without talking about going to Washington State and Rex?
Delegate, if a supplier makes a false claim, that is bad marketing practices. If a supplier is selling a renewable product, like I'm a community solar customer, I know what I'm getting, and our contention is that in our client space, we're offering a more straightforward renewable energy product, and we want customers to know that. We agree that bad marketing practices should be stopped, and the way to do that is not through the Renewable Portfolio Standard, in our opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we in a global crisis or not? Because I understand what people are saying, that they might not be able to bifurcate it out, but if it's a global crisis, then it's a global crisis, and we need to bring all of our resources to bear. In your mind, should this be handled with the PSC and the federal level? Because I do believe in the consumer protection measures that I think the bill are trying to address. But at the same time, if part of that portfolio is renewable tier 1 from Washington, and we are in a global crisis like we hear all the time, whether you believe that, don't believe that, sort of believe it, doesn't matter. We're here now. And I think people are smart enough to understand clean energy on a global scale. And I think people are smart enough to understand ultimately what they're doing, whether it's strengthening clean energy here in Maryland or strengthening clean energy abroad, especially in the United States and globally. But Anyway, my question is that do you think this should be handled, rather, because I've heard the federal, talk about the feds, and also, or should this be handled by the PSC? I do think that there's some validity to the bill. I agree with my colleague here. I think, people should be some type of aware, even if it's some type of disclosure on the bill that, some of this energy might come from Washington State. But my point is like we're either in a global crisis or we're not. And this is one of the things that we're trying to do to address it.
So thank you for the
Not
question.
the bill, I mean everything that we're doing here.
So I think how I would answer that, delegate, is that adding a secondary green power definition as this bill contemplates and the disclosure, if you read OPC's, like, we're not the only people saying this, it's only going to confuse people. I understand the intent of the bill. That should be the Public Service Commission. They've been ramping up. They're doing a good, let's let them keep handling it, would be our opinion.
And they have, look, Comar addresses this.
Guys,
Could I, very quickly, can I just hear what John has to say? Can I just hear what John has to say very
Sure
quickly?
thing, colleague.
If there's an interest in opening up Comar, and talking about consumer protections, there are ongoing work groups at the Public Service Commission that can take this up. And if there's a desire to address that, it could. When a windmill turns, we're displacing other energy. And so that's, it should be discussed.
Okay, and I think that's a discussion that we should initiate with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate.
Delegate Queen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to try to bring us back to the bill. So I remember you made a comment with Ms. Nash when Ms. Harrison said to make it plain for people, everybody can understand. You said, I do agree there are deceptive practices that we need to address. Suggestions or amendments on how we could address that, if you want to talk to now or provide us later, I think that would be helpful.
I think I heard that you wanted follow-up information. Is that right, Delegate? Is that what you were? I'm happy to comment now, but. Okay.
If you want to comment now, are there ways that we can handle those deceptive practices?
We looked at amendments, and we looked at ways to make it better. Truthfully, I did. The challenge that we have is the way the bill is written. It's embedded in the renewable portfolio standard. I know I've said that multiple times, but that really is a challenge with the bill. I think that the disclosure as contemplated is very confusing for consumers, and I don't think that it would, and I don't have any sample language with me today that would make that better. I could certainly work on it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I do not believe there are any more questions for this panel. And we will move on finally to the next bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now that my vice chair has finally come to work, we will do his House Bill 903. We do have members of Appropriations sitting in because they are second on this bill. Thank you guys for coming.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. It's great to be at work today. Colleagues, for the record, Delegate Brian Crosby, here to present House Bill 903, titled Insurance Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund Assessments. Since 1973, MAIF has really been the insurer of last resort here, and they insure high-risk drivers that private insurance companies are unwilling to insure, and Maryland residents are unable to obtain insurance in the private market. One of the mechanisms for MAIF has always been assessments on private insurance companies, which insurers are allowed to recoup from their policyholders, which ultimately helps fund the program. Since 1989, which was actually our last assessment, which I think speaks to how well we've done here in Maryland, over $10 million has been over-recouped from policyholders by insurance companies, and that has resulted in overpayment credits that are in MAIF's account, but which cannot be used as a surplus. And thus, they've just sat there since 1989 and have never been used. Private insurance companies have not been assessed anything since 1989. Due to multiple factors, and we don't need to get into them, MAIF has experienced a decline in their surplus over the last 2 decades. And I think that there are some benefits to that, but there are also some challenges that come along with it. And in most of the last 20 years, they've operated at a net loss. A private passenger assessment, frankly, is imminent and is still, with this bill, likely to happen at some point in the near future. HB 903 is really just a technical bill, and I think that it does several things. First, it allows MAIF to access that $10 million in overpayment credits. Second, it assesses insurance carriers and policyholders. Third, it alters the allocation of uninsured motorist penalty fines to give MAIF 20% of those fines, which is an increase, to help make them balanced or a more balanced approach going forward. And it simplifies the assessment process and avoids overpayment credits in the future. And I will let the panel go into further detail, but with that, I urge the committee for a favorable report.
Thank you, Delegate Crosby. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we appreciate being here. Al Redmer on behalf of Maryland Auto. Mr. Chair, I will be the only one that will testify, but with me
Thank you.
Four questions if they arise. To my left is Dave Pfeiffer, our COO. You all know Sandy Dotson, our Government Relations Manager, and Dennis Carroll, who's had a long, distinguished career both in the private and public sector, helps us with government relations and also works with our general counsel. I'm going to be unusually brief. Delegate Crosby did a great job of outlining the bill. I will just mention a couple of things. First, regarding our surplus, all carriers have to have a surplus, and a surplus is a sum of money that has to be available for future policyholder claims. We track it literally every month, and if our surplus drops below a certain point, that triggers the assessment that Delegate Crosby discussed. In addition to our role as the insurer of last resort, our statute, our mission, if you will, requires us to look at affordability of premiums. Now, when you think about it, our role is to try to make sure that uninsured drivers become insured. And probably the number one reason that uninsured folks don't buy insurance is the issue of the premium, the money. And we manage that affordability by what we refer to as an affordability cap. So we look at all the zip codes where we do business. We look at the median income. We try to keep the premium to within 2.5% of the median income. So if you are a Maryland Auto policyholder, if you're in a middle class or upper middle class area, you're going to pay the full load based on claims and operating expenses. And then secondly, if you are in a low income area, we lose money to typically 30 to 40%. With that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions.
Just for my colleagues, could you just introduce your panel? They don't have to say anything. Because I'm sorry, I'm scratching the names off. I should have been paying attention.
Sure. We've got Dave Pfeiffer, our COO, Dennis Carroll, and Sandy Dotson.
Thank you. That's everyone. Colleagues, any questions? Seeing none. Delegate Queen.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. This will be very easy for the sponsor. You have a lot of favorables, some favorable with amendments, one particularly from the Economic Action Maryland. They'll probably come up and talk, but would you let us know at some point in time, are you okay with these amendments? Thank you very much.
Yep, will do.
I believe that completes questions for this panel. I'll be calling the next group of individuals. Thank you guys very much. Calling Isadora Stern, Bryson Popham, Nancy Egan, and Bob Enton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. With my fellow panel members' permission, I'll begin. My name is Bryson Popham. I'm here today on behalf of 3 clients: Agency Insurance Company, the Insurance Agents and Brokers, and the Maryland Association of Mutual Insurance Companies. Speaking really for the insurance industry, and my first statement to the committee is, as Delegate Queen just inquired about amendments, you have a set of amendments from the industry. I am withdrawing those amendments on behalf of the industry now. We are not taking a position of favorable with amendments any longer, so you may disregard the amendments that are in your packet. I'd also, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, like to take a point of personal privilege and thank the Vice Chairman for meeting with me before the hearing today to discuss some issues surrounding the bill. I deeply appreciate that, and I want the committee to know that I do appreciate it. While we are not submitting amendments, we do believe that MAIF, and in particular the subject of MAIF rating adequacy or lack thereof, is an important public policy issue. That's how we got to where we are today. And yesterday, in the Finance Committee, Mr. Redmer, who gave longer testimony than he did today, noted that for some of their territories, they have a rate insufficiency and inadequacy of as much as 40%. That means 40% below cost for them. In a report the MIA did in 2004, they noted that the rate inadequacy was 15%. And that is an important metric. And for that reason, we are recommending to the committee that you send a letter to the Maryland Insurance Administration and ask them to update that study from 2004. We think that information would be useful to you. That concludes my testimony, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you. I just have one distinction that I'd like you to make, and you talk about rate adequacy, but the Maryland Auto Insurance Fund is also about, to some extent, affordability for people who cannot get insurance in other places. Is that correct?
It's not quite correct.
Well, let me put it this way. The policy that we as legislators have to set is that we have to make sure we are getting as many uninsured motorists insured as possible. And MAIF is a large part of that.
Yes.
That solution.
Yes.
So it is a balance of inadequacy and affordability.
Yes, but what I was going to say, Delegate Watson, is that the statute requires the insurance administration to consider the statutory purpose of the fund. That, in essence, is code language for affordability. They are the ones who should be looking at rate adequacy, and we are suggesting that you go back to them and say, you haven't given us a report since 2004. How about updating that report? Simple request.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Delegate. Seeing no further questions, go ahead, ma'am. Nancy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nancy Egan from the American Property Casualty Insurance Association, and my members write in the private passenger auto market, 55.7% of the private passenger auto market. I will not go any further. I just want to appreciate MAIF reaching out to us and having meetings with us in November and December to discuss the $9+ million that have been sitting on their books since 1989 that now will be able to be used for any future assessment. As my colleague mentioned, there is an additional funding stream for MAIF, which is another reason for looking at their current operations. And with that, I will turn it over to my next colleague. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Economic Matters Committee. My name is Isadora Stern. I am a policy manager with Economic Action Maryland. We were formerly the Maryland Consumer Rights Coalition. We are a statewide nonprofit organization that works to advance economic equity and justice for working families across the state. And we do this through our direct service, our research, education, and our advocacy work. We see this bill as a two-part bill. The first part being that it gives MAIF access to that $9.5 million in the overassessment account. We are supportive of this. We think that MAPE should have access to that additional funding when an assessment is next triggered. We do, however, have issue with the change in allocation of the uninsured motorist fines. We see that MAPE's responsibility is to insure the uninsureds, a lot of whom are uninsured because of an affordability issue. We have information that 59% of MAPE's policyholders are good drivers, which means that they're there because they have either lapsed in insurance or have bad credit, which to us indicates that they are unable to afford their insurance. Funding MAPE through the uninsured motorist fines and increasing that allocation is only going to prevent the need for an assessment. MAPE doesn't get the $9.5 million until an assessment is triggered. So we feel that the second half of the bill is unethical and also just delays the need for an assessment. We also do not see we don't understand the resistance to assessments, or that issue has come up multiple times. An assessment was last done in 1989. About $3 to $5 was charged to policyholders. We represent consumers. If that is too much for consumers, then we think $5 is more affordable than the $150 for the uninsured motorist fines. I think we need to understand the priority here in getting people insurance and keeping them insured. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Ms. Stern, just to clarify, because oh, sorry, yeah. Ms. Stern, just to clarify, your amendment is essentially to strike the uninsured motorist fines, correct? Like across the board, if I read this correctly.
We would like to strike the adjusted allocation. We understand that there's already funding coming from the uninsured motorist fines.
Correct.
We just don't want to change that allocation and prolong the need for an assessment.
Okay, but ultimately, MAPE pays out for people who are uninsured, right? If you get into an accident with somebody who's uninsured, MAPE will actually pay that out and then try to recoup. Additionally, through funding them, all of the other rates in this room are lower because of that. So that's another part to this. So giving them a larger funding stream to cover essentially their expenses, ultimately will help insurance, ratepayers across the board. So that is another aspect of this. Isn't that so?
Well, you make a great point, Vice Chair. We do understand that MAPE is required to stay solvent. We understand that their funding will ensure that folks without insurance are able to get insurance. However, we think that it is an ethical concern about where that funding is coming from. Right now, we're looking at an option of an assessment or this change in the allocation to uninsured. That's how I'm seeing it, as a change in the allocation of funding is only going to prolong the need for an assessment. If we're going to have an assessment, we can just do an assessment. We don't understand why we need to change the allocation.
And I guess when you start throwing around the word unethical, especially to the lawmaker who actually submitted this bill, it does cause some consternation. So again, you choose your words how you choose to, but you might want to be more careful with how you choose them. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. I would just like to say that in our testimony, we flagged that there are options to help low-income folks pay their fines more affordably. In 2019 through 2021, there was an amnesty program that was highly successful. It didn't only allow folks to repay their fines, but it also allowed MAPE to recoup about $8 million. We think that should be something that this body could consider in order to make up for finding those low-income people.
And to be clear, ma'am, I do not doubt your written testimony. I would just ask that you choose your words carefully when you throw the words unethical around in my committee.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes this hearing. If there are no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you.
I believe possibly finally, the chair of judiciary has decided to grace us with his presence and his 18 oral witnesses. But you take your time, sir. We're here for you. I'm assuming this is getting me back preemptively for my hearing next week.
My first panel could come on up. Okay. Good afternoon, committee.
And I just want to make sure the chair understands that because you're a chairman and obviously a colleague, the timer doesn't start with you. We believe in giving our colleagues ample time to testify on their bill, but my watch is still clicking.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I'll have to keep that in mind at the beginning of your 3 minutes next week. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Members of the committee, I welcome you to this table read of my new 3-act play, Mark Fisher, the man, the myth, the legend. Oh, hi. Oh, I'm not doing that now. Okay. Thank you very much, members of the committee. I'm happy to be here to present not my new 3-act play, but to present House Bill 908, legislation related to making our community solar program permanent and changing it from a pilot program. Community solar has made real progress in helping our communities to be able to generate more renewable energy than we have in the past. From solar, we've had 100 megawatts of capacity from a little over 50 projects, and now a little more than 5% of Marylanders are participating. You all know what community solar already does. What this bill does, again, is it changes it from a pilot program to a permanent program, and it requires developers of future programs to dedicate at least 40% of their project to low and moderate income families. This will help to expand the program out even more and help us to meet our goals. And it will enable a number of different groups to get involved with this program and to build more jobs across our state. There are clarifying amendments to the bill that we're submitting to the committee, including striking one bracket that was inadvertently inserted by the bill drafter. But overall, in my last 40 seconds, which I appreciate, I do appreciate, they, when I left downstairs, they were on the sole witness of the second bill for 45 minutes. So I'll say that, I can appreciate it. We started this 8 years ago. We passed the bill 8 years ago. It was supposed to be a pilot for 3 years, and then it needed to be extended, and needed to be extended again. And frankly, I think that there's been an enormous amount of work done on the regulations, and we've really truly built out this market that is making a positive difference here in Maryland. I think it's time now to provide that extra certainty in the marketplace and to make this permanent. I think it's time also now for us to have consolidated billing, something that will help especially low and moderate income people truly participate in this process. I know that there are questions that have been raised by the Public Service Commission and by the utilities, and I've had conversations with both of those groups and hope to have further conversations with them, even after I understand this committee gets the bill. But I'll say the time is now to do this, and we have it within ourselves to do it, so I hope this committee will move favorably on this bill. And with that, I'll hand it over to my panel and let them go.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say thank you for being quasi-timely. I just wanted you to feel the pressure of the clock because I know you don't normally have to feel that. But again, we do appreciate your testimony.
We embrace the clock in judiciary. we love the clock.
We noticed you got a few key sponsors on the bill, which is pretty smart. Looking at your co-sponsor list, seems like you worked the committee pretty hard. So we look forward to hearing from your witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Clippinger, Chair Wilson, Vice Chair Crosby, and members of this committee. My name is Charlie Coggeshall. I'm the Mid-Atlantic Director for the Coalition for Community Solar Access. I reside in North Carolina, but I was born and raised here in Maryland in Montgomery County. CCSA is a trade association with over 100 member organizations engaged in competitive community renewable energy markets across the country, and we've been an active stakeholder here in Maryland in the development of the Community Solar Pilot Program. I'm providing this testimony in support of Chair Clippinger's House Bill 908. The most important aspect of this legislation is the removal of the pilot status of the Community Solar Program and associated sunset date of 2024. As the program enters its 7th and final year, the sunset is effectively a cliff. These projects involve long-term investments that rely on market certainty, and without that, the development will halt, pulling the rug out from an industry and market that has spent nearly a decade getting established. Beyond this urgency, there is enormous opportunity. HB 908 leverages the momentum and lessons learned by the pilot program, as well as experience gained from other markets. At the national level, community solar has grown exponentially since 2015. It's been embraced not only by states, but the federal government as well, and for good reason. HB 908 achieves a trifecta of policy goals for Maryland, including equity, energy, and economy. It ensures solar, particularly electricity cost savings, are accessible to all customers, especially those that need it most. It gives Maryland an important tool in meeting its clean energy targets, of which the state needs help. And it leverages newly extended federal tax incentives under the Inflation Reduction Act to provide Maryland with homegrown energy that results in economic benefits, not only to subscribing customers, but also to the localities where these projects are built. HB 908 is essential legislation in 2023, and we look forward to working with the Chair Clippinger, Chair Wilson, members of this committee, and all interested parties in moving the bill forward. Thank you.
Hello again, Chair Wilson and members of ECM. I'm Laurel Peltier, and I'm the AARP Maryland Utility Advocate. And we have run this bill up to AARP National, and I just wanted to share, this is the first time AARP has ever waded into anything to do with climate change. And the reason is that we weighed in on policies that raise rates, and we weighed in on policies that reduce rates. And for seniors, there is a major benefit in this bill to have community solar discount for low-income families. And the discount's huge. It can be up to 25% of your entire electricity bill. And what's interesting about the low-income segment, it's huge in our state. There's a new report that came out. It's 450,000 households, and over 40% of those are seniors. They make about $18,000 a year. But I also wanted to let you know that I've been selling community solar for 3 years at the community center to older seniors who are very low income, and we've only made one sale. And the reason is that because it's this dual billing, I have to say, oh, it's really cool after I explain this whole product. Do you have a debit card or a MasterCard or a Visa? And they look at me and they're like, no. Do you have a bank account that I can hit and have a charge come every single month? And they're like, are you kidding? I'm not giving you my bank account. People in the low income segment bank differently, and community solar so far has required debit and credit cards. It's been a no-go for low income, and the big part of this bill is to have community solar on the BG&E bill so that people can participate in it. So AARP asked a favorable report because this is not only lowering the energy bill, but getting a whole hundreds of thousands of households to be part of clean energy. Thank you.
Ma'am, I just want to say thank you. I know that the sponsor's been a member of your great organization for some time, so thank you for coming up and supporting it.
Me too.
You are funny. Hi, my name is Kimberly Armstrong.
No, he's not.
Good afternoon, Chair and the committee. Thank you for allowing us to testify on behalf of SB 908. My name is Kimberly Armstrong. I am the Program Director for Solar United Neighbors in Maryland. Solar United Neighbors is a national nonprofit, and what we do is we help people to go solar. We mainly focus on rooftop solar. However, we do educate people on community solar. So I'm going to be wearing two hats because I also have community solar myself. I'm currently a subscriber of community solar. Therefore, I'm also speaking as a participant in how it has reduced my utility bill at least $30 to $40 a month. And sure, it may not seem a lot, but being a parent with a young daughter and a grandson still living at home, that's extra money that means gas in my car or food on the table. Personally, there has been several times when I've had to use subsidies, such as energy assistance, to help with my utilities. Why? Because I was considered once the working poor. It now has a fancier name called low and moderate income. Many people are still in this category, if not many more. I'm saying this because energy is a necessity. We all need it. However, it can be a financial burden for almost 40% of Marylanders. Community solar is an opportunity to, one, reduce energy bills, two, allow all Marylanders to participate in clean energy while doing good for themselves and the environment. Community solar allows everyone to participate in clean energy. Therefore, I'm in support of making this a permanent program. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, Rob Gargiola with Compass on behalf of CCSA, supporting House Bill 908. I thank Chair Clippinger for sponsoring this and being a champion of this over the years. First question you have to ask is do we need to make this permanent? And the answer clearly is yes. There are 25 states now that have permanent programs. When Maryland initiated this program in 2015, we were on the forefront. Other states are far surpassed us now. Why do we need to make it permanent this year? If we don't take action in 2023, this program comes to a halt. Community solar development in Maryland comes to a halt. Federal dollars don't come to the state for this type of renewable energy. So we have to pass this year. Other important aspects of the legislation. There is a 40% mandate on developers, that's who I represent, 40% mandate that we would put in law that we're accepting to ensure that low and moderate income families can take advantage of this program. We have a convoluted system today to try to get outreach to low and moderate income. This puts a hard mandate, but there are some tools that are needed, including consolidated billing, which you're going to be hearing about more of. That is an important tool. If you do not have consolidated billing, low and moderate income families who are using energy assistance, they can't apply that to community solar. So there's barriers if we don't have consolidated billing. This committee passed consolidated billing last year. It's part of this bill. You need that in order to serve this population. The other thing is that it encourages development in non-ag areas. It encourages development in non-ag areas. That's an important component of this. There's still going to be some development on ag, but this encourages development on rooftops, industrial, brownfields, parking lots. These are the things that you want to encourage. It also provides more resources to the PSC. Now, I think that the issues raised by the PSC and the utilities largely can be addressed. What I would say in my final seconds is we should not open the door here for utilities to do generation for community solar. I think the other issues that they raise and the PSC raises are addressable issues. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would urge support of this legislation.
Let's see, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. I believe, Seth, did you have a question? Because I know I had to turn your mic off because it was showing your face and nobody wanted that. Go ahead, sir.
He loves you.
It's on April. That's not sad.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for finally figuring that out and getting me up there. That's right, yeah. So this is for the gentlewoman from AARP. One of the concerns that I have with the bill, when you look at the analysis, it says remove all program categories, and as you move down a little bit later into the analysis of the bill, it talks about self-attestation for LMI, for all the reasons that the other young lady stated about community solar reducing her bill and allowing her some flexibility in choosing to buy, medicine and food and things like that. And we have a large population of what we call the silver tsunami, older people, the boomers, quite frankly. And, so we need to be sensitive to that. But, one of the concerns I have would be the removal of LMI verification that was brought up in the PSC letter as well. How would you respond to that? Because, I don't want to negatively affect our friends that these type of programs are helping.
That is an interesting self-attestation, and I've, for the last 5 years, have been working with hundreds and hundreds of low-income families. And many, many states, especially California, do self-attestation, and they've gone back and found that there's this, will there be fraud?
Oh, I know they're human
I'm
beings
just
involved.
making sure I'm
fraud.
answering the
Yeah.
right question.
Yeah.
It's amazing how honest people are. And right now, it's so difficult to prove, and it sounds like it wouldn't be, but you have to basically bring your SNAP letter or bring your OHEP letter or something. But there are ways, and there's really good models in other states where self-attestation is working really well so that the people that deserve it should get it. I think that's a tactical question. I think it's a real question, but I'm just going to share with you, I counted 500 families so far, so sitting down doing OHEP. I've only had one person who lied to me, and OHEP caught it. And I'm going to tell you about this one lady too. She had cancer, stage 4, and I know she's not here right now. And she was freaking, and she had this massive BG&E bill. And I said, I'm kind of bummed she lied to me. I understand why she did. That's the only out of all the 500 people that's lied to me. I think it can be developed tactically, and I think for our low-income segment, we should be pushing more toward ways of doing that. And the thing is, what they do is they do post-audits. So you can do small samples and just find out, is your process working? So I hope that answered that question.
It does in general. I would like to see a little bit more information about those post-audits, when they're conducted, the results and the findings of those post-audits, how many have been done, because it looks like LMI verification is already part of the community solar bill. I think, Chair, I think that was Sally Jameson's bill. I think I actually, years ago, you said 8 years ago?
That was my bill.
Was your bill? Okay.
Yeah.
There's another community solar with Sally.
There have been, yeah, but
But anyway, so it's initiatives that I support, but I also understand human nature, and I want to make sure, and I do believe generally people are good, but I want to make sure that the most vulnerable among us are protected to the maximum scope that we're allowed and that we can do. In other words, I want to put a good product forth out of the committee if we do choose to move forward with this. So I would be interested to see some of that information that you spoke about. If you could provide that to my office and the members of this committee, that would be wonderful.
And I can share that there's a new Maryland Energy Burden Report, and there's a whole section in there about self-attestation in California. So what I'll do is send it to you and then mark it. It's pretty interesting.
Please, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Push it now? Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the bill, and thank you for the testimony today. And this question was brought to me by a constituent, but also it does highlight something that we're dealing with in Carroll County as far as it appears in the bill that it's making it easier for solar farms, larger scale solar farms, to go into farmland. And agriculture is our #1 industry in Carroll, and we're having a lot of discussion about that. So can someone speak to that process and what control locals will have over placement of these solar farms?
For very, very briefly, and then I know others want to add on to this. The limit on the size of these projects has been 5 megawatts. These are not utility grade projects. These are smaller projects to begin with. And so that's one important thing to remember. The other thing to remember is that they have to stay within the service area of the utility where the person who's participating in the community solar program lives. So if I live in South Baltimore, I have to get the electricity from a solar array somewhere in BGE's service area. If I live in Montgomery County, from Pepco and so on. The idea there was to partially ensure that areas of the state that have larger agricultural sectors are not overburdened with a lot of smaller community solar projects. There are other things that come into play both in this bill and in the existing program that seek to limit that. There's a section of the bill that has to do with agrivoltaics that allows farmland that needs to remain fallow or needs to rest to do that while having solar panels temporarily placed over top of it. So there are ways that we've worked with this program for so long to try to address those concerns, but I will defer to the rest of the panel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Clippinger. I think that was a great response. This isn't going to make things easier for development. Development's been challenging in Maryland for community solar projects. I think you might notice the co-location aspect that Rob talked about. That kind of co-location is going to be rare, and it's because of the challenges from a permitting perspective or interconnection standpoint that are going to sort of prevent that from going out of control. However, where there's co-location allowed, one scenario would be agrivoltaics. Agrivoltaics is specific to solar panels being potentially high enough so that you could be actually using the farm and producing with the farm underneath of those solar panels. That's a best practice that's been adopted in New Jersey, in Massachusetts, Illinois, other states that we're starting to try to, blend into Maryland's community solar program as well. But, the CPCN process, I understand that goes into kind of PSC jurisdiction. Below that stays with the counties. There's nothing easy about developing a community solar project in Maryland, and I don't want it to seem that this bill is going to suddenly make it easier.
Okay, just as a follow-up, I guess my biggest concern is, and this is, I know you say it's not easy, but we have, I think we're up to maybe 10 that are in the, sort of in the pipeline, and it's really becoming something that, is a big concern because, again, being primarily agriculture, but of course, we have a lot of bedroom communities that back up. And so as this is really ramping up, my concern is how much are we making this super easy, and then how much local control will we have over placement, of these farms?
Charlie, if I may. So this bill won't make it like more favorable to do it in ag. In fact, so what's in law today with respect to ag, that's unchanged. What this bill actually does do, though, is it actually provides incentives to do it in places other than ag. So that's a feature of this bill. The one feature that would maintain it in ag is literally what Charlie talked about, if it's agrivoltaic, where it's essentially solar panels on stilts. And it's not a pollinator habitat. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about growing like crops. We're talking about, tomato plants or other things. So, if there's a change from this bill affecting Carroll County or any other community, this bill won't incent more in ag. In fact, it actually will incent in other places other than ag.
All right, thank you for your answers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question hopefully is kind of simple. I have a lot of favorable testimony here, but I don't know if, I just want to bring your attention to, and I don't know if you've seen the amendments from IBEW wanting to have prevailing wages for hires and more diversity in hiring for women and veterans and low to moderate income folks. So just want to make sure you look at that and get back to us on any issues or concerns maybe with those amendments.
I've heard from them. I've heard from the AFL-CIO. We'll be happy to look at those amendments and go from there.
And if I may also add, Delegate Queen, just yesterday evening, the Senate Finance Committee moved a bill sponsored by Senator Feldman that would require prevailing wage for any type of project above 2 megawatts that has a CPCN. So that would affect most of these projects as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any data on how many solar systems wholly owned by subscribers in other states that have community solar? And did that affect the goal of 40% of its kilowatt hour output for LMI subscribers?
You want it,
Charlie? So I'd say that I think we talked about this a little bit when we met previously, Doug Jackson. There's many programs that have requirements for low to moderate income participation in programs. Virginia's got a 30% requirement. We want a 40% requirement here. New Jersey's got a 51% requirement. California's about to have 51% requirement. Typically, it doesn't involve true ownership, legal ownership of those customers of the project, from those customers on the project. It just allows them to subscribe to the project and receive the electricity cost savings and the benefits associated with the generation from the project. They're usually owned by third-party investors. A lot of the CCSA members have those relationships with the investors or developers. And the reason for that is it basically just simplifies the process for the customer. It takes away the kind of upfront capital cost burden that like on-site solar might have. And basically just says, sign up here and you will start receiving savings on your bill. There are kind of community-owned projects out there, but I don't have, and we can look into this, I don't have kind of data off the top of my head on how much capacity there is of those kind of projects.
So they would contribute to the 40% though, right?
Yes, they absolutely could.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, seeing no further questions for this panel, that concludes the panel. Next, we have a second panel. John Miller, Al Bartlett, Kristen Harbison, and Victoria Venable.
Mr. Vice Chair, I'm sorry I have to go back downstairs. I didn't think, I know. Delegate Fisher is very upset, but having said that, thank you all very much.
Yep, take care. And you can start whenever you're up and ready, whoever's first.
batting leadoff. My name is
Technically
John
fifth.
Lennon Miller. Am I good?
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead.
My name is John Lennon Miller. I live in Woodstock, Howard County, Maryland. I'm representing Chaberton Energy, a local Maryland-based developer with an office in North Bethesda, Montgomery County, as well as the Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association, CHESA, which represents over 120 member companies doing business in Maryland and the Mid-Atlantic. Chaberton Energy was built upon the framework that the state set up with the Community Solar Pilot Program. In 3 years, we have grown and now employ 27 people, with 12 people located in Maryland. I feel very strongly that community solar is the absolute best way to deliver solar energy savings directly to residents. Community solar has the ability to impact almost everybody. Essentially, if you have a utility bill, you can participate. The projects we develop deliver real and tangible benefits to your constituents, the residents of Maryland. A typical project we develop is projected to save local residents over $150 a year, equaling over $2.7 million of consumer savings stemming from a single project. We are particularly excited about the benefits that will flow to the low to moderate income communities from community solar as a result of this bill. Quite simply, this bill will provide energy equity in an incredibly efficient and impactful way. There is carefully crafted co-location language in this bill to allow for projects to be sited in ways which most efficiently deliver on the benefits of community solar. It will encourage development on preferred sites for low to moderate income subscribers and for the widespread adoption of sustainable agrivoltaic practices. Community solar is about more than just financial and environmental benefits. It's also about land preservation, landowner rights, free market competition for electricity, and energy choice for all Marylanders. In order to keep building on the successes of Maryland and to keep fostering jobs for a strong local economy, stimulating tax revenue, saving the people of Maryland money on their energy bills, supporting energy equity to low to moderate income residents, we strongly urge the committee to extend the community solar program through 908.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Dr. Alfred Bartlett. I'm representing Chesapeake Physicians for Social Responsibility and the Maryland Sierra Club. Both organizations urge a favorable report. Since 2015, I've been an active member of the PSC's Community Solar Working Group and also the subgroup focused on low and moderate income, or LMI, households. In a March 2021 rulemaking, the possibility was raised that participation in community solar might be incompatible with energy assistance to low-income families through the Office of Home Energy Programs, or OHEP. The commissioners charged the working group to find the answer, and so we did an analysis led by MEA and including PSC and OPC staff, the director of OHEP, utilities, community solar providers, and other working group members. OHEP confirmed that energy assistance payments can only be made to a customer's utility. They can be applied to third-party suppliers because their charges are on the utility bill through utility consolidated billing with purchase of receivables, or UCB with POR. But with separate billing, this payment can't be applied to community solar. So if a household receiving energy assistance signs up for community solar, they lose the part of the assistance that exceeds the utility's charges. They pay the whole community solar bill separately. As a result, even with solar discounts, they can end up paying more overall for their electricity. We also found that many LMI households don't have credit cards or bank accounts to pay bills. They pay cash. They can pay the consolidated utility bill at supermarkets or pharmacies and other locations, but not the separate community solar bill. So we recommended that community solar be included in UCB with POR. Separate billing will keep many of those 450,000 low-income households from participating in community solar. And that's why HB 908 makes UCB with POR a part of community solar going forward. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kristen Harbison. I'm the political director for the Maryland League of Conservation Voters, here in strong support of HB 908, a bill to make Maryland's community solar program permanent. And we are grateful to Chairman Clippinger for his enduring and steadfast leadership on this issue. As other panelists have outlined, when the General Assembly, through the work of this committee, first passed HB 1087 in 2015, Maryland became a pathbreaker for community solar, and now Maryland, the trailblazer, risks falling behind if this program is allowed to lapse at the end of 2024. HB 908 ensures that Maryland remains a leader, both through affirming community solar is an essential part of our clean energy economy, and also enshrining key provisions that ensure that a permanent program is accessible to all Marylanders. It's critical that this bill pass and that it pass this year. And on an unseasonably warm day, as cherry blossoms are blooming, about several weeks before they should be, beyond the pocketbook issues outlined by previous speakers, this program will continue to play a vital role in ensuring that Maryland reaches the renewable energy goals set forward by the Clean Energy Jobs Act and the work of this committee in 2019, as well as the still more ambitious commitments set by Governor Moore for 100% clean energy by 2035. These goals are achievable, but only with bold and aggressive support of clean energy development, especially homegrown solar, even as we look to protect our cherished forests and farmlands, and we rely on our agricultural economy. This bill is a priority of the Maryland environmental community. It is a top priority of Maryland League of Conservation voters, and we strongly urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Victoria Venable. I am the Legislative Director for Frederick County Executive Jessica Fitzwater. I'm here today to speak a little bit about the local government perspective on community solar. Our county staff has actually had several meetings with solar producers and providers, developers, who have expressed that the market uncertainty that we've been hearing a lot about today is deterring them from actually investing in places like Frederick County. We have states not far from Maryland that provide other opportunities, which gives them some hesitancy for investing in places like Frederick. On the contrary, we're having constituents come to us voicing their support for community solar and additional renewable energy sources. In the fall of 2022, we had our former county executive hold a public process for soliciting input on legislative priorities, and repeatedly, this bill in particular, promoting making community solar a permanent program, came up not only from organizations like the Sierra Club or LCV, but also from constituents who had just enjoyed this program and enjoyed the benefits that they were seeing on their pocketbook. Finally, I want to share that some of the uncertainty is also impacting some of our local governments. So in Frederick, we are currently working on a climate and energy action plan for our community. One of the key parts of that will be the use of community solar, but that's something that makes it very difficult for us to plan when we are not sure if this program will continue. So with that said, I urge a favorable vote and extend the support from the County Executive, Jessica Fitzwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a question for, I guess, the gentleman here. You mentioned energy equity. What is that?
So in the terms of this, the energy equity would be the 40% LMI requirement that comes with it. In my opinion, it's just simply flowing the benefits from community solar to those residents who need it most. And in terms of how this bill supports that, it's both the 40% requirement, but then also, importantly, the consolidated billing and other measures that's going to lower the barrier for those residents to subscribe.
So in the fiscal note, it says the PSC advises that the bill puts upward pressure on electricity prices, which are paid by state, local governments, small businesses, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just trying to figure out, how does energy equity figure into that?
We understand that one of the issues is we haven't been able to get the calculations from that commission in terms of how that happens. In terms of actually for the subscribers themselves, the benefits are tangible, and they're also guaranteed in terms of a discount off. I think the concept that this is going to raise utility rates across the board, it has quite frankly been unsubstantiated to this point, and also a situation where the benefits outweigh the risks.
How many community solar projects have been built so far in the state?
I believe there is approximately operating 100 megawatts or so in the state.
Is that one project?
No. So our projects up until this point have been 2 megawatts each.
And anyone, what is a subscription coordinator?
So a subscription coordinator is essentially the company that is the arm that sells the subscriptions to residents and small businesses. Generally, developers like us, we specialize in actually developing the project, getting it through to what we call construction ready or to construction. And a subscription coordinator is a company that specializes in actually selling those subscriptions to residents.
Got it. Thank you.
Justin, you made a comment about 100% renewable energy by 2035.
That is Governor Moore's commitment to 100% clean energy.
Okay, you said we could meet that.
It is achievable if we are ambitious, if we are aggressive about making these kinds of
Could
commitments.
you give me any idea on the amount of land or rooftop we would have to have covered to do that? Do you have any idea?
I don't actually. Well, partly because we need to look at a number of different things. It's not only solar, it's also wind, and it's also wind and offshore wind. I can certainly follow up with you about that later.
I was told I was at an environment and transportation meeting with a group of them, and they made a comment that to replace Calvert Cliffs with solar, we would have to build a solar field 7 times the size of Tacoma Park. And I'm just wondering, how big does this have to be, and where will we put all this stuff? In Maryland?
Well, I don't think this bill doesn't address Calvert Cliffs or suggest
Well,
replacing
it'd be 100% renewable.
Well, the definition of, we can talk later about the definition of clean energy. I don't know that.
We're trying to phase that out, though. You see there's been.
Okay.
No, all right.
That is not part of this bill, and it's not anything that I've ever spoken to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. What threshold is set on these subscribers? I mean, this could be anybody? Is this somebody from the nonprofit industrial complex? I mean, what threshold or
Yep.
who can do it?
Yep, understand. So as the program operates right now, and also will be under the bill, for non-LMI required subscribers. So the LMI required subscribers are in a different bucket, essentially. Sure. For the ones that are open, that's really going to be open to any resident or small business with a utility bill as part of, from one of the IOUs,
No,
right?
I mean,
From one of the.
who's able to sign these people up?
Oh, who signs them up?
The subscriber.
Yeah, so those are the subscriber coordinators I mentioned earlier. Those are generally private companies. There are several that operate in Maryland, one that is located and was founded in Maryland. I can name a few: Neighborhood Sun, Arcadia. They're private companies that specialize in the marketing and contracting for those.
Okay, so is there any type of threshold that's set on them as far as what?
Yes,
how they qualify to do
Yeah, so from my understanding, and I'm not a subscription coordinator, but my understanding is subscription coordinators do need to be qualified through the PSC.
Okay.
And there are regulations that govern what they do.
Okay.
But I can ask one of the companies I know to provide more information.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I'll hit up Tony from the PSC, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to address, so back to the community solar programs, and I'm reading from the fiscal note, page 4. It says a community solar energy generating system as defined in statute is a system that, in addition to other requirements, bullet number 2, has at least 2 subscribers but no limit to the maximum number of subscribers. So if somebody is in BG&E in Carroll County, that's 1 subscriber, right? And then somebody in BG&E over in Baltimore County, that counts?
Yes. So right now, it just has to be within the same utility territory.
So they could do an entire solar panel farm if there's just one person that wants it in Carroll and one person that wants it in a neighboring jurisdiction?
Well, I mean, technically, yes, because it needs to have more than 2. However, I don't know of any community solar projects that have that kind of mix. And the reason for that is the larger a user is, actually, the lower the rate they pay. So in order to make these projects financeable, generally we look to offset residential and small commercial customers that pay higher rates. So that's how we can deliver these projects with the necessary rates of return.
Okay, but technically they could do that.
Yeah, I think technically they could, but I can't think of a single one that's been set up like that so far, and I couldn't imagine doing one. I've never done one in my career like that in community solar, and many states have somewhat similar rules for the last decade, I haven't heard of one with something that big. The largest anchor tenant I've ever really heard of is a single 40% anchor tenant.
All right, thank you for your answer.
Just quickly, and I probably should ask the first panel this, but nonetheless, they do consolidated billing in other states, correct? Like this isn't a revolutionary idea, right?
That is correct.
All right, seeing no further questions, that concludes this panel. Next, we'll go to the favorable with amendments. I have Brett Leiniger, Colby Ferguson, David Lapp, Brian Weibel, and you can start when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Brett Leininger here on behalf of NRG, favorable with technical amendment. NRG has been committed to delivering value-added products and services, including community solar subscriptions. House Bill 908, obviously, as you heard before, customers would receive a single bill. Recently, the PSC underwent a process to create supplier consolidated billing by the end of 2023, and gives people the ability to get just one bill if they so choose. The amendment that we would offer is aimed at ensuring that the collection of the electricity supply, the delivery service charges are not impacted by the addition of the community solar subscription charges, so that it would be in keeping and clarify that it would be in keeping with the supplier consolidated billing order that was established by the Public Service Commission. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Crosby and members of the committee. David Lapp here on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. We are very supportive of this bill and making community solar permanent. We think it provides the benefits of solar energy to a broader community, a lower income community, and people who can't put rooftop solar on their roofs, or people that want to supplement their rooftop solar to renters, people in multifamily housing. While we support the bill, we would offer two technical amendments. I guess we could call them technical. As Delegate Howard raised, we are concerned about the self-attestation without penalty of perjury. In our experience, a lot of customers don't understand income qualifications. There's a number of different ways a customer can qualify as LMI under the bill. And our experience with retail suppliers is that while there are honest and upfront suppliers out there, that's not the case with everyone. And so consumers could be easily misled or not informed as to what it means to be LMI. And we think that tightening that requirement would provide more reliable data on which it can be evaluated whether this LMI requirement, we strongly endorse a high aggressive LMI requirement. At the same time, we think we need to know that that is being met for real. The second point that we would like to see an amendment on relates to consolidated billing and specifically the purchase of receivables. We talk about that in our written testimony, so I would refer you to that testimony. And finally, I would just say that we agree with the previous panelist point that this bill should not be the opportunity to allow the utilities to get into community solar. There are important policy reasons why that's not the case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Colby Ferguson on behalf of Maryland Farm Bureau, and we're here actually in support with amendment. I'm bending so much, I feel like I'm doing limbo on this bill, but we are here in support because we do support the community solar side of it and see this as an opportunity to meet our in-state solar carve-out goals without just planting everything on our prime and productive farmlands like the commercial solar seems to want to do. So Our amendments, I think the first one is pretty simple, and I'm hoping that they consider this to be a friendly amendment. They kind of OLA'd the definition of agrivoltaics, so we took a stab at it with what's in current law for agriculture and put a definition, a little more specific definition on what is considered agriculture under agrivoltaics. But then I think the more important piece that I want to stress is that I think our Second Amendment addresses a lot of the solar siting issues. Unless you live under a rock, you know that that's where the main bottleneck is in solar right now, is the siting issues and where to put them, what to put them on, how big to make them. And so where we're at now is that we're only talking about, when this all started, it was only supposed to be 2 megawatts or smaller. Now we're up to 5. And all we're saying is that from that 2 to 5 category, when you decide to go over that, and now you're starting to get into the 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 acre parcels, that just stay off of the class 1 and 2 soils, the primary productive farmland. There's class 3 soils and lower, roughly 35 to 40% of the central part of the state is class 3 or lower. So that's roughly 300,000 acres. I think we can get our 30,000 acres out of that if we need to. And so our ask is that if you're not going to make it an agrivoltaics project and you're going to go to that 2 to 5, just take it off. Just don't do the class 1 and 2 soils. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Crosby and members of the committee. My name is Brian Wyville, no relation, and I am the Legislative and Political Director for the Maryland... we'll deal with that later. And I am the Legislative and Political Director for the Maryland State and DC AFL-CIO. I'm here today to testify in support with amendments for HB 908, which makes permanent and modifies the existing community solar energy generation pilot program. We strongly support the bill's aims to increase new renewable energy generation and facilitate ways for workers to better access renewable energy generation. Though we seek to amend HB 908 to set basic job standards for this emerging industry in line with job standards proposed on other bills before this committee and in past climate bills like the Clean Energy Jobs Act of 2019. Community solar was an industry set up and facilitated by state grants, incentives, and support. It was later expanded through this pilot program. The state helped shape this industry, and now it is ready to once again expand it by making the pilot program permanent. In line with the Maryland and DC AFL-CIO's policies and resolutions on requiring all state tax credits, grants, and incentives to have good job standards attached to them, and our 2022 convention resolution on fighting to make climate jobs good jobs, we ask this committee to pass our amendment requiring job standards on community solar projects in Maryland. You can find our amendment in the text of President Edwards' testimony. Unfortunately, solar jobs are not necessarily good jobs. Many suffer from low pay, misclassification, and expensive certificate training programs that offer no pathways for career advancement. We also wish to highlight that our state's usage of RGGI money for bill assistance is far higher than neighboring states. New energy generation will help bring down energy bills, but creating low-wage jobs that will force Maryland to still find money for bill assistance and decrease our ability to use CEF money for new energy generation. It's a vicious cycle that can only be fixed by fighting for better wages and benefits for all workers, especially when the state is involved in setting up the industry. Support HB 908 with our proposed amendment to make sure that green energy goals and worker goals are one and the same.
Thank you, sir, and to this panel. So just for the members, we're having some technical difficulties. I see when you press your button, I unpress it up here. That way it doesn't just flag the next person because things are jacked up. And then I just take a list down. So I have your names. First up is Delegate Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Colby, talk to me very quickly, walk me through these Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 soils for the benefit of the committee, and quite frankly, for my benefit as also. What can be grown on them? Why are they more important than a Class 3?
So, and I'm talking specifically the agricultural zone land. Everybody, all soil types have, or all land has a soil type. I'm just specifically talking about agriculture.
I like to eat, so yeah, absolutely.
So Class 1 is the best quality soil. That would be grade A. Class 2 would be next, which would have maybe some percolability issues. Maybe the water doesn't flow through it as easily. Maybe it's tighter soils, more clay. Then you move into Class 3 soils. A lot of times this is shallow top soils or sandy soils or things that are heavily clay soils. Okay. One good thing about solar panels is They don't care what soil they go into, they just need to be able to see the sky. And so that's why our thing of it is that Class 3 soils, which tend to be the lower quality soils and lower, they go on down, 5, 6, 7. But basically 1 and 2 is what we call prime and productive farmland. That's the stuff that when we do Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation MALF money and we preserve farms, that's the ones that we target. We don't really target those Class 3 and down. We go after 1 and 2 because we know if we preserve those, then those are the ones that's going to give us future growth, future food growth, and grow more with less. So our wish is that we Montgomery County, when they had all their local discussion on community solar, did an assessment of just the ag reserve, which is their 85,000+ acres in the northern part of the county, and they found that only 2,500 acres of that 85,000 was Class 1. 44,000 acres was Class 2, and 35,000 acres was Class 3 and lower. So that made us know right there that in Montgomery County, which is a similar soil type to Frederick County, similar soil type to Howard County, Carroll County, basically those Piedmont soils, roughly 35 to 50% of the soil type is going to be Class 3 or lower. So when you look at, we have 1.1 million acres of cultivated ground. This is no trees, no fences, just plowed ground for fruit, vegetables, everything. Needing 36,000 acres to meet our in-state solar carve-out, we firmly believe that Class 3 and lower soils, there's more than enough acres, roughly 300,000 to 500,000 acres.
Okay, anything in the bill calling for the use and the prioritization of those Class 3?
No, that's why we asked for the amendment.
Okay, all right, thank you, Colby.
Thank you, Chair. So, David, you mentioned receivables, and that caught my attention. What is your concern with that? I've read your letter, but I'm not completely on board with why you would make that an issue.
Sure. In the context of retail suppliers, we see that the purchase of receivables creates a disincentive for retail suppliers to market to customers who they know can afford their bills. So what purchase of receivables does is the utilities are required to pay the retail supplier. In this case, it could be the subscription, the community solar subscription company, and the utility would essentially pay the retail supplier the full amount of their account, and then the utility is responsible for collecting those bills. And so the supplier gets paid in full, while the utility is stuck with any customers who aren't paying the bills. And so this creates an incentive on the part of retail suppliers, and we've had plenty of experience with this, where they're signing up customers for bills that they can't afford or at rates they can't afford. We think that concern is less likely in the community solar context, but we are working before the Public Service Commission to fix that problem. We hope to fix that problem. And we expect that there will be Public Service Commission action to fix that problem. And all we're saying is that if there are fixes to that issue, that the same fixes should apply to community solar consolidated billing as to retail supplier consolidated billing.
That's an interesting perspective. Colby, your testimony implies there might be something not quite adequate with the CPCN process, because you would think locally zoning land use would come to these CPCNs and this would come up. So you're here today because you're concerned for rural ag land. Is that your testimony in some respect?
Yeah, nothing in the Public Service Commission, nothing in current law does anything as far as to determine what agricultural soils to preference or to stay off of. It's basically, if the Public Service Commission does their certificate and decides that this is a necessity in that region, they supersede the local jurisdiction, and whether it's the prime and productive land that the local government wants to stay off of, whether it's a historical society area, it doesn't matter. It's preempted by the Public Service
I
Commission.
mean, I'm with many of your members. I'm an Eastern Shore representative, and farmers would say they'd like, if they want, to use their land for solar to be able to do that. And my only comment has been, well, okay, so long as you stay within the concept of the comprehensive plan for the counties, that we respect our main thrust of economic development, which is agriculture and poultry. And I worry because we continue to see, and now I'm seeing testimony that's trying to resolve sort of anytime a bill comes up, asserting local control and consideration through the CPCN, which is where these would almost always get resolved. And it worries me that your testimony fits what I think the rural farmland owners would want you to say, but the venue is not the legislature. It should be a very strong and dynamic CPCN process that respects local control. Thank you. I'm sure you would agree.
Well, the
Yeah.
one thing about community solar is it's exempt from CPCN process.
Well, then there you go. Okay, so my problem, so your problem remains. It's just that it's now you've got to come to the legislature and say, you know, okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colby, this is a question for you. So I think you mentioned that, Carol, that most of our soils would fall under those 1 and 2.
About 50%, yeah.
About 50%. So going back to some previous testimony and knowing, so we're dealing with Carroll County, another issue, actually with the utility. And there is a need to replace the large transmission lines. And they were going to go straight through prime farmland in the southeastern part of our county. And that's just putting up a line of poles, one line of poles. This, when they were mentioning these can be solar farms on stilts, how are farmers going to be able to still use their equipment? Can you walk me through how this is a workable
So on the
scenario?
so that you're talking the agrivoltaics, because under a typical community solar, not agrivoltaics or commercial solar or net metering project, that piece of ground that those solar panels on is typically has a fence around it, and the solar group is in charge of everything inside the fence. And so that's why you mostly see grass or whatnot in it. When you move to the agrivoltaic side, that's when there is a dual liability between the farmer and the solar institution that now said, okay, hey, we're going to allow you to run cattle in there, sheep in there, goats in there. We're going to allow you to do hay equipment between the panels if we build them with the horizontal versions. Raise them up so you can do stoop crops such as fruit and vegetables, low-lying vegetables. So there are quite a few projects that are moving, and we're actually looking to try to get more of the agrivoltaics piece. I would much rather see, if we're going to put solar panels on, that we continue to farm with it versus just remove farming. And the problem that we have is replacing food producing for electric producing. And that's really what's happening is it's an either or, and we're trying to get it to an and by doing the agrivoltaics. And so that's why incentivizing the agrivoltaics component is essential, but it's really only going to work in the community solar side. In the smaller projects, you're not going to see agrivoltaics on a 200, 500 acre spot. It just, unless you're going to go to a lot of H2A workers and basically do stoop crops underneath, it just won't work. So the community solar projects were typically 1 to 2 megawatts in size. They do actually show viability with the dual use or the agrivoltaic. So in Carroll County, the challenge that we have is that 2 megawatts is roughly 12 to 15 acres in size, which that gobbles up those. I was making hay off of that field and now it's solar panels, or I was running a few beef cattle on that field and now it's solar panels. That's the biggest issue in Carroll County. But with the agrivoltaics, that could now be, those solar panels can be there and then those livestock can still be there. And that's the hope is that we get away from this either or and get to some sort of and, that you can do cattle and solar together.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's the People's Council, right? You testified that the investor-owned utility ought not be allowed to be an owner or investor in community solar. Can you expand on why that would be the case?
Sure. I mean, about 20 years ago, the state passed a law that that said that utilities could not own generation. We think that setting aside the merits of the restructuring law, the aspect of that law that prevents utilities from engaging and from doing generation, we think that that's positive. It's resulted in lower prices, we think, through PJM, the competitive market. We also would be concerned that community solar competition in that market would be diminished if utilities were allowed to step in.
I got the answer. So how about a community solar project is built, and then the investor-owned utility then has to interconnect with it and pay for the lines and poles to connect with it? I mean, my understanding is that cost recovery is not necessarily directly attributable and paid for by the ratepayers. I mean, that's why I'm confused. I mean, you're saying that they should be responsible for paying all these costs, but they shouldn't be able to get into the business, and I'm just not following why that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not saying that the utility should not be entitled to recover the costs either from the connecting customer or from ratepayers. That's a whole nother topic of discussion, but the utility is entitled to recover those costs.
But it is part of this discussion because this discussion and this bill directly will impact them. That's my point.
Absolutely, the utility recovers those costs. That's distinct from, I mean, that applies across the board to any generation, and it's not distinct to
Fair enough. And the gentleman
solar.
with the unions, we've been hearing for as long as I can remember, the solar companies coming up saying how they're really high-paying jobs. But you're testifying today that they're low-paying jobs. I'm really curious, after hearing 8 years of high-paying jobs and now the union's saying the low-paying jobs, can you figure that out for me?
Certainly. So it depends upon who's doing that electrical work. If it's done through union contractors, paying prevailing wage standards, done through union apprenticeship programs where people are given the opportunity to advance their career in the electrical trades, that's one category where those can be great jobs with fulfilling opportunities for them. There is another approach to the industry, which is low-paying jobs which require workers to pay for their own certification and training, where they might not be able to find other work because conflicting certificates of where they got trained. That's a different approach to the industry, and there have been kind of reports to that effect.
Okay, so you don't think that driving up costs with prevailing wage would impact the overall cost to the consumers in community solar, since the goal is to make the prices less expensive for those who are the least among us?
Certainly, I think the aims of the bill to deliver competitive prices and low prices to low and moderate income rate users, I think that's an important aspect of the bill. But I think as the state looks at its spending from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund in thinking about where that money is going, the question of whether that money should be used to subsidize low-paying jobs, which are then going to require additional energy assistance, it creates, like we said, a vicious cycle where the only way to actually break away from it might end up being to not be, penny smart, pound foolish, but spending a little bit of extra money up front in order to make sure that those people are not then on energy assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, a follow-up to Delegate Adams's question. I just wanted to clarify, the reason that community solar isn't under a CPCN process is because of its size. Anything under 5 megawatts isn't under CPCN process. Is that right? That your understanding?
Two things. It's allowed to be tied to distribution lines, which are different from the transmission lines, and it's that smaller size.
Because it's smaller size. It's not a community solar exception. It's a size exception. So I just wanted to.
Net metering's the same way.
Correct. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions for this panel, we will now move to the unfavorable. I have 5 individuals: Ann Clace, Deontay Reed, Brett Sprawl, John Quinn, and Devesh Gupta. And you can start when ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Economic Matters Committee. For the record, my name is Ann Clace. I'm here on behalf of Pepco and Delmarva Power to respectfully oppose House Bill 908 as currently drafted. First, I want to reiterate we support community solar and support equitable access to renewable energy by allowing all households to benefit from solar energy. However, we have concerns with some of the bill as drafted. As discussed, in addition to establishing permanent community solar program, this legislation requires a utility to establish a consolidated billing system to combine the subscription fee, solar credits, and utility charges together on a single bill. In order to implement this, we would need specific EDI, electronic data interchange structure, or another alternative for the data exchange, which requires significant costs and changes to our current systems. Mechanisms need to be developed through work group processes and rule-making sessions in conjunction with the PSC. Additionally, while the legislation allows for a utility to collect a 1% fee for the use of consolidated billing, there is no guarantee that that fee would cover the full cost of the system upgrades. By asking utilities to implement these systems changes, we must be able to seek full recovery costs for these IT upgrades. Finally, utilities are currently unable to participate in community solar as discussed today. Under the current construct, we hope the committee will consider enabling legislation to allow utilities to participate in order to provide more options for low to moderate income customers. We believe that with utility participation, we can help reach our state's aggressive climate goals. While there are many different models and program designs for community solar, it's important to note that there have been many successful utility-owned community solar projects throughout the United States. While community solar can provide low and moderate income customers with much-needed electricity bill savings, reaching these customers will require innovative ideas and solutions, focused policy support, and deliberate program design with engagement that we believe we have the ability to reach these customers. We recognize that various stakeholders all have important roles to play in ensuring not only the success of community solar,
Ma'am,
but
can you
also
start
the
to wrap
success
up?
and reaching our climate goals and mitigating our climate change impacts. We look forward to continuing conversations with the bill sponsors and all stakeholders involved. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm John Quinn with Baltimore Gas Electric Company. With me, I have Mr. Devesh Gupta. He's our BG's Director of Strategy, and he is not a registered lobbyist, so I've asked him to come with me to present our testimony today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee. Devesh Gupta, Director of Strategy for BGE. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on this bill. BGE supports community solar and, in fact, the need for permanency of a community solar program. But we urge this committee to promote the original intents of the community solar pilot program as well. And there are three that I'm going to focus on today from our perspective. One is customer choice, two is customer affordability, and then finally, customer equitable access. Around customer choice, one of our concerns is just the ability for customers to choose whether they are getting consolidated billing or being billed by their community solar organization. In addition, we're seeing more and more customers that are complaining about they don't recall how they signed up for this or what this is. So again, emphasizing the need for more consumer protection of customers as we start to see these programs continue to expand. Around customer affordability, you know, we have to be mindful of program costs, and that's not to say that we don't do those things going forward, but we're mindful of them, we know how much they're going to cost, and we look for ways to drive more affordability as well, new strategies and solutions. In this case, BG is estimating that for our system alone, we could see costs of $20 million or more for utility consolidated billing. It's not to say that it's not something to do, but it's to say that, hey, this is information everybody needs so that we understand what pressures are going to be there so that we address them as well. Now, spending a little time on equitable access. You know, I do want to stress that we support the 40% requirement under this bill for limited income customers and their access to the bill. Unfortunately, there is a carve out in that for solar that is of a certain size that is actually owned by the subscribers. And businesses can be subscribers. So you can imagine, say, a property developer that has multiple tenants at different locations, gets them all together into a community solar project and develops one, you know, in one of our counties. That carve out doesn't need to be there. And then just the last thing, if I could, on the topic of utility ownership, there's a reason why utility consolidated billing is being is being advocated for by community solar subscribers, and there is trust in the utility. And that's what they want to take advantage of as well. With that trust, we've built it. We've shown that we can help access benefits for limited income customers, and we would ask for you to allow us to use that trust to offer community solar to customers as well.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. My name is Brett Sproul from the Public Service Commission. I'm here today for House Bill 908, which seeks to make the Community Solar Pilot Program a permanent program and effectively alters the policies that govern community solar in the state. The PSC, however, not opposed to an eventual permanent program, has several concerns with the details of the bill, and I will focus on two main concerns. Number one, the bill's impact to utility billing, and number two, the bill's impact to low-income customers. For my first concern, this bill proposes to allow community solar projects the ability to include subscription fees onto a utility bill. In order to use the utility billing systems, there needs to be both an established data transfer mechanism and a purchase of receivables mechanism. Establishing these mechanisms will likely require very costly system changes, as mentioned before us today, and these costs will be borne by all Maryland ratepayers regardless of their community solar status. Additionally, for utility billing, under current policies, unpaid charges which appear on the utility bill contribute to service disconnection balances. If community solar subscription fees are allowed to bill through the utility systems, then customers who are unable to pay their subscription fee will be subject to utility action and possible service disconnection. This could negatively impact community solar customers and especially low-income customers. For my second concern, HB 908 also allows customers to verify low-income status using a self-attestation method without penalties for falsely attesting to a customer's income status. This change may create a situation where customers self-attest to their low-income status when in fact they are not low-income. This change could hurt genuine low-income customers by limiting their ability to participate in community solar. The PSC has several other concerns, and we are very happy to work with the sponsor and staff on this bill moving forward, but I will yield my time to answer any questions. Thank you.
So quickly before we go to questions, just a reminder, I encourage everybody up there to work with the bill sponsor. Please take that seriously. With that, Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have a couple questions. So I guess this is BG&E and or PEPCO. Can you explain why consolidated billing with community solar is so very different from the consolidated billing you're doing for retail suppliers, that it would be a whole nother set of systems? Like, why is it that community solar can't come and use the same systems that you have in place for retail suppliers?
I can handle that, sure. Happy to address that. So yes, there's a system set up for retail suppliers today for utility consolidated billing. Currently, because community solar has been in a pilot, though we're seeing thousands of customers, those systems haven't yet been built out. And it requires connections, things like, as he talked about, EDI testing and systems for attachments. It's new types of suppliers that need to be brought onto the system. All of this code takes dollars, takes times, and takes effort to put into place.
So let's just back up for a second. How many retail suppliers are there in the state right now that have the ability to do consolidated billing with you?
I'm not aware of that off the top of my head. Maybe the commission is.
Like 100, 300, 50?
It's more than 50.
More than 50, okay.
Yeah, let's say.
And if a new retail supplier comes into town and gets all their credentials and everything else, will it cost you $20 million to add them to the system?
It won't cost us $20 million because they're doing the same thing that the other suppliers are doing.
So this is my question. Can you explain exactly why it is different when a community solar company is using that system as opposed to when a retail supplier is using that system?
And it has to do with the difference in product. In this case, you're talking about a net energy product, right? So we have customers that have a bill of, say, 100 kilowatts. I'm just throwing a number out there. And a community solar subscriber comes in. So a retail supplier will say, all 100 kilowatts is the retail suppliers. There's not anything fancy about that for us, at least in our systems. For a community solar subscriber that's showing up, we have to be sure to net out, let's say, the 20 kilowatts that they're purchasing from that community solar project, and make sure that the bill is accurate. In addition,
You're already doing that part, right?
but not in our permanent billing systems because it was not yet a permanent program.
So, okay, hang on. So that part you're already doing. And so what would be different is this part about EDI and purchase of receivables, right?
Operationalizing it so that the program can take advantage of those additional functionalities.
And so what is the difference? So you've already built a lot of the systems in terms of figuring out how to credit for what is coming from the net metering, the virtual net metering, essentially. You've already built that system, piloted, but it's there, right? So you've been making that permanent. And so what is it that's different about the EDI and the purchase of receivables that is so different from what you have with the retail suppliers that you're claiming it's going to cost this huge amount of money?
It's a great question, and I would use the term systems for the program that we're running right now loosely, right? We're not talking about the same automation that we have. We're not talking about an electronic system all the way through from end to end that has all of the same automatic auditing capabilities, automatic kind of backstops. We're having to do a lot manually right now to support the pilot program, which we always assumed at some point when the legislature moved forward with a permanent program, the investments could be made.
So is the upgrade that's coming related to making the pilot part permanent, or is it related to using consolidated billing?
I think it's both, right? There's going to be costs associated with all of that transition, and it has to be built out together, otherwise you're going to end up with more expensive.
Well, I agree that it has to be built out together, but I think we've all agreed that this is going to become permanent, and your testimony suggests that it's that part of what you're opposed to and what shouldn't be in the permanent is consolidated billing, and which is a crucial piece to making it permanent. So in some ways, that's not fully accurate, that it's the consolidated billing that makes it more expensive. There's going to be some costs when you go from pilot to permanent, so it's not really fair to say this is the cost for consolidated billing, which then would leverage low-income people being able to be part of it and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I would agree that the cost only of the functionality of utility consolidated billing may not be the full cost of, say, the 20 million or more. It's embedded there, and I don't have the numbers as to, right now, what exact piece is that if that was not included in the bill.
So, and I guess this is the next, well, it does make it permanent, and it is included in the, so I guess here's my next question, and you don't have to, I don't expect you to come up with this off the top of your head, but I would like to see the math on the 20 million, because that's a huge number to float around when the direction of the General Assembly is headed towards making this permanent, when it's important for equity, when consolidated billing is in particular is important for equity. To throw that number out there without being able to provide the math behind it, I think can be irresponsible, because we need to make some really important decisions about the future of this. So can you break that down for us? If you can't do that now, can you break that down? Like, what part of it is making it permanent? What part of it is consolidated billing? What part can be tagged on to work you're doing with retail suppliers already? Those kinds of things.
Understood. I mean, I think that's something that we can go back and break down.
Okay.
For sure.
I have one more question, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to understand this part of your testimony, which seems to be, we don't think this bill should pass, we don't think this should be permanent, we don't think there should be consolidated billing, but if you're going to do it, we'd like to be in on the game. Did I get that right?
No. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So it's not that we don't think that this bill should pass. Like we said, we support community solar, but there are provisions in this bill that need to be fixed in order for us to support it. Yes, we want to participate in community solar, but yes, there are 4, 5, 6 other issues that need to be addressed in this bill before we would be able to move to a supportive position.
Okay. So if you got to do community solar, would you support the rest of the bill?
If everything else was fixed, yeah.
Okay. So with the reason that you have a monopoly, and it's a natural monopoly, so it makes sense, right? You got a monopoly, and it's a sort of by nature of what you have. And generally, the reason that we would allow a monopoly to also own something that is in the competitive market is because there's some kind of a market failure, right? And can you tell me what the market failure is in generation and in community solar that you would be stepping into that would make us justify why a monopoly utility ought to own generation in this context?
Again, we're not necessarily saying there's a market failure, but we're saying we have aggressive climate goals to meet, and we would like the opportunity to participate because we think it's an all-hands-on-deck approach, and we think that we, can get into that low to moderate income communities that we have established relationships with, and we think that, we're just asking for the opportunity.
Yeah, it feels like if you really want to expand it, you could work with the sponsors and the providers to actually make the program work with things like consolidated billing, as opposed to saying the way you're going to make it work is if you can have community solar.
There's going to be
But I'll let
time
it
for
go there.
further dialogue.
Thank you, Mr.
And we
Chair.
don't have a problem with
Delegate
implementing
Fraser
consolidated
Hidalgo,
billing,
thank you.
but it's going to cost money.
Thank you. I wanted to explore a little bit, Delegate Charkoudian already started the exploration, but I want to explore a little bit the concept of generation. I'm new to the committee, and my understanding is years ago, when we were talking about going from deregulation to regulation, kind of the third rail or one of the pillars of moving is to ensure that utilities aren't actually generating. So I don't know if this is for Mr. Gupta, since you're the strategy person, but can you tell me why that would make sense to do now versus years ago when that was the third rail, other than what was stated earlier about climate goals, because that is the third rail, and that's something that I think a lot of people, including myself, get very uncomfortable with. We've done a lot to have the utilities to get into electric vehicle charging, all kinds of things of that nature, and this is just kind of that one extra reach that makes people pause.
That's a fair question. I think I would go back to, and not focusing only on the climate goals, but that is a very different set of circumstances that we're in today with the ambitious goals that we've set as a state, 60% by 2031, 100% by 2045. These things don't happen if we don't have clean generation behind the electrification efforts as well. And there is so much clean generation that's going to be required to get to where we need to be that we do have to have a lot of different tools in the tool belt. And when we think about that additional layer of equity in particular, you pointed out electric vehicle programs. That's a place where it was seen that, okay, the utilities might have a place to play to fill gaps in the market from private companies to focus on equity. And here as well, we're only talking about, I think somebody mentioned the number today, 5% of the market is community solar. We need a whole lot more of it. And there may not be a market failure, or we don't perceive there to be one right now. There is real risk that there will be a market failure if we don't enable those tools today for us to be focused on those particularly limited income customers, protecting them and giving them the solutions right now. Because if they have utility consolidated billing as well, we've seen it in retail residential markets where suppliers that come in, they say that they're from the utility. And they do prey first and foremost on the elderly, on low-income customers, especially where there's purchase of receivables. Ways that we can drive more protection around that is to let us, as a well-regulated utility that the Commission has a lot of oversight over, help to serve those customers' needs more fully, even in the clean energy, so that they can participate in clean energy in a way that is safe, affordable, reliable.
Yeah, so the only thing that I would submit to you, there's a pretty big difference between storage and distribution on chargers and actually getting into generation. So, yeah, I'm done. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry about that. I'm just going to ask a couple questions around customer affordability, because that was another issue you said was a problem. And outside of the consolidated billing piece, I think we can have more dialogue on that. But it was something about not ability to pay their subscription fee, and I'm trying to figure out how that relates to community solar specifically, and if they were part of, if you got involved with it, how would that go away, or do we have an idea? Explain that to me, I guess, why we think that's going to be prohibitive for people.
And are you referencing the possibility for the subscription fees to lead to utility collective actions or disconnections?
I don't know, because you talked about it, so what were you talking about?
So for the, under the utility consolidated billing, if that is the way that is able to move forward with community solar. If the subscription fees are included on the utility bill, as it goes right now under COMAR and under utility policies, if a customer is unable to pay that subscription fee from the community solar, that is considered being unable to pay their utility bill, and therefore they could suffer consequences such as utility collective actions and or disconnection. And from the PSC perspective, that would be a potential disconnection for a non-energy service, which is up until this point has not occurred in Maryland policy.
Okay, so you don't cut people off because isn't there an initial fee when I connect with you the first time though? Right, some sort of fee when I become a first-time user of BGE or Pepco or whatever. So how's that different from a subscription fee, or what does that cost? Or I'm just not following that. Maybe this has to be offline.
And we can discuss this further offline. I'd be happy to help, but I think it really goes on the point that the subscription fee is not necessarily for supplier distribution.
I understand, but it's a first-time connection fee I do when I'm a first-time user with you as well.
The subscription fees are ongoing subscription fees from the solar subscribers that are
I
on
see.
their bill.
It would be on the bill every
So you
single
think
month.
this, okay, we'll talk about it more. All right.
Just for my own knowledge here, Exelon sells energy in Illinois? Yeah, is that ComEd, I think? However you pronounce that? And you both are subsidiaries to Exelon, right?
Yes, we are.
So Illinois has consolidated billing. So how do they do it in Illinois that would be any different than how we do it here?
I don't think there's an argument that there would be any way that we're doing it differently, or that there's an argument that consolidated billing might not be a part of a permanent program, just that there are costs involved and processes that need to be implemented.
Okay, so it's just strictly the cost. And frankly, I mean, since other companies have done it underneath the parent company, right, there should be some efficiencies gained, you would think, than implementing it previously. Like the first person is probably going to have the greatest cost. The 10th, it's probably going to be sheltered a little bit. There'll be a cost with it, no doubt about it, but it'll be sheltered. Okay, it's something that we will consider. I'm sure this is going to go to subcommittee, so appreciate it. Appreciate all of you. That concludes this bill hearing. Seeing no further questions. Final bill of the day, House Bill 914, Delegate Jackson. Carl, did you want to have PSC come up with you?
Yes.
Okay. And you can start when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow members of the Economic Matters Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Carl Jackson here in favor of HB 914, Public Service Commission Judicial Review Proceedings. I introduced this bill at the request of the Public Service Commission. In the effort of time, I will not read my prepared remarks. I will just summarize what this bill is about. This bill specifies that a judicial review of a final decision or order by the Public Service Commission must be instituted in a circuit court for a county in which the public service company that is a party to the proceedings provides service, or in the circuit court for Baltimore City. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Miles Mitchell. I'm counsel for the Maryland Public Service Commission. I want you to know that public service companies, which are often referred to as investor-owned utilities, are franchised by the General Assembly to construct distribution facilities within the state in counties in order to serve their customers. By statute, rather, than by franchise. Retail suppliers are licensed by the PSC to provide competitive retail energy services to utility customers. The revisions proposed for under House Bill 914 are needed to prevent circuit court judges from loosely interpreting the words involved and operates to include retail energy suppliers and other entities that are not public service companies when deciding where venue lies for petitions for judicial review and PSC decisions. The loose interpretation of the statute by the Sixth Circuit, which is Montgomery County in 2021, has resulted in a foot race by suppliers and supplier petitioners to courthouses away from the Circuit Court for Baltimore City to file their petitions for judicial review, and attorneys for petitioners ignoring the venue statute altogether. The PSC has long understood the plain meaning of the statute to require that venue lies where the utility has distribution facilities and infrastructure in the ground, where utilities pay property taxes, is responsive to county and municipal officials' concerns regarding public safety, and otherwise venue lies in the Circuit Court for Baltimore City. And I thank you, and I'm available for questions if you have any.
Oh, one more thing, Mr. Chair. I was moving so quickly, I forgot to urge a favorable report. Thank you.
We assumed. All right. Seeing no questions, that completes this panel.
We have one more.
Sorry.
I don't have you signed up, Lisa.
not signed up.
So if there's any questions, no questions. Just up there for moral support. All right. That concludes this panel. Go to the unfavorable. We have Richard Reinhardt.
Thank you very much, Elliot. Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the ECM Committee. For the record, my name is Richard Reinhardt. I represent the Retail Energy Supply Association, MD-RESA. It's a group of retail energy suppliers devoted to working with all stakeholders to promote vibrant and sustainable competitive retail energy markets for residential and industrial consumers. First, let me just say I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Delegate Jackson for his time and his staff yesterday, and also talking with the staff council from the commission. We're here to oppose House Bill 914. Simply put, this bill is aimed at limiting fairness and choice. It's disguised really as legislation that's providing necessary clarification and economic stewardship to ratepayers, but it's not. HB 914 is really stemming from cases where we just heard, and it's part of the written testimony by the Office of Police, by the Public Counsel and the Public Service Commission. There have been cases stemming where the PSC have lost their motions to transfer venue following energy suppliers and gas suppliers filing judicial review in other various jurisdictions other than Baltimore City. And through those decisions, the retail energy suppliers have won those decisions. They've maintained their venue in those particular jurisdictions where they file their petition. Now, the commission's coming to you to say unilaterally, we are going to make the decisions and override what these circuit courts have decided and determined, and basically making their own ruling by saying we only want to force retail energy suppliers to be held to a jurisdiction of one rather than others. This is a choice that has been given and afforded to retailers in the past. Why should we give up or strip that choice and opportunity now? For that, I seek an unfavorable report. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no questions, thank you, sir. That concludes this bill hearing and the bill hearings for today. Members, just a reminder, on Monday, the governor will be here, so please be on time. Thank you. Delegate Queen. I just want to say, I'm Rich Reinhardt.